Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Uchiha, draw your swords. Cut down the konoha. Chapter 41. Fire wave as an attitude. Represents Ruuo's determination to protect his companions. Minato ducked. Although Shadow Clone number 1 was equivalent to a close-up attack, Minato still managed to evade it by relying on the Flying Thunder God mark left on his teammates. But Aburame is also within the killing range of this fire wave. Minato could only activate the Flying Thunder God again and came to Akamaiki Dingza again. Give it to me. Akamaiki Dingzwo's size increased dozens of times, and he kept spinning with a long black stick in his hand, and he was able to withstand the powerful fire of Shadow Clone. The main body should give me more chakra. Shadow Clone number 1 muttered, silently retreated, and returned to the main body. Now that he has used up his chakra, it is useless except for being beaten. It is better to use it to transfer damage to the main body. Kokuo, don't move around here. Leave the rest to me. After instructing Kokuo to pretend to be dead, Ruuo decided to take action himself. If this was coming from someone else, Ruuo would definitely have to be reserved. Just pretend that he can't control Five Tails, let Five Tails defend himself, and stand on Five Tails' head to break up the fight. Stop fighting, don't fight. But the person coming is little Taiyang Minato. Then let me meet this golden flash of the future. Ode. The flames condensed and the fire dragon appeared. This time, there were 3 fire dragons. In addition to the one under his feet, there were 2 more on both sides of Ruuo. Take off. That's Xiao Ruuo's technique. The third generation's expression in the distance changed. Why is Xiao Ruuo there? Xiao Ruuo. White Fang was also stunned. Which little Ruuo? Is it the boy who defeated Kakashi? Yes. Third generation's expression became complicated. That kid has an absolute talent for fire style. All ninjutsu will become fire style in his hands. I once saw him fly into the sky with a fire dragon in 2 Chunin tests. That kid is the only one in the ninja world who can do this. This is a very high praise, but it is not used as a compliment at this moment. White Fang's expression suddenly became extremely strange, and he immediately realized a fact. A tricky fact. So, that's not genjutsu. That's certainly not genjutsu. Not to mention the distance, Aburame-Jawei's phantom-breaking insect didn't react at all. But why did that child appear in 5 tails? Third generation also looked confused. Well, White Fang grinned and took a breath. The kid told me that he defeated 5 tails Jinchuriki and became partners with 5 tails. I thought. Quote. Third generation fell silent. He understands White Fang. Even if the facts are right in front of him, what White Fang said is still a bit fanciful. The ninjas in the ceiling class and Anbu both showed doubtful expressions, but the third generation showed no signs of it. Because Orochimaru told him so. Oops. Third generation suddenly realized something. That kid is a bit. Third generation couldn't find a suitable adjective at the moment, so he simply gave up and went straight to the point. Minato and the others may have angered him. At this time, Ruuo had already launched an attack on the Minato team. Ode. The 3 fire dragons advanced at the same time and met the Minato team head-on. Akamaiki Dingzao had just resisted Shadow Clone's massive fire attack and felt good about himself, but as soon as he stopped, he saw 3 fire dragons rushing over. Minato. Akamaiki Chozuo shouted, "You guys retreat first." Minato had just launched the Flying Thunder God several times in succession, and the chakra consumption was huge. Moreover, Akamaiki Dingzao knew that even if Minato still had enough chakra, it would be difficult for the Flying Thunder God to activate it if he did not cancel the doubling technique. Then we can only buy time for the 2 of them. The 3 fire dragons and the boy were getting closer and closer, and a shout was heard in the air. The voice was childish but extremely firm, and full of anger. Will of fire, give me strength. If the fire seal has been completed, the 3 fire dragons, 1 at the feet and 2 at the side, are in the shape of a pin, and at the same time they open their bloody mouths. Fire style, roar. 4 shots of dragon flame, sprayed simultaneously. Akamaiki Dingzwo's expression froze at that moment. How could he block this will of fire? But at this time, the thin figure that could make all the ninjas in Konoha feel at ease suddenly stood in front of the 3 of them. The third generation can't fly the Thunder God, but it can achieve the effect of forcible displacement by shrinking the ape demon several hundred meters long. I saw the third generation's hands forming seals, and a shadow clone appeared beside him. Ninja technique. Thunder Water Dragon Bullet. Boom. The water dragon surrounding the electric arc faced the high-temperature flames gathered by the fusion of 4 dragon flames. The figure of third generation is so thin, but at this moment he is so tall. Are there any masters? Ruuo's sight was blocked by the flames and the fire dragons on both sides at first, and then he realized that it was the third generation who had withstood his 4-barreled flamethrower. At this time, third generation is not that old. Although it is not at its peak, it is still on the tail of its peak. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is getting stronger with age. A thunder and water dragon bullet was fired at it, and it was a 50-50 match with Ruuo's fire dragon roar, and there were faint signs of a breakthrough. 4 shots of dragon flame can't defeat a combination of ninjutsu. Is the combination ninjutsu so strong? Ruuo narrowed his eyes. In that case, Amatai Lassie. When the 5 tails chakra is mobilized, the high-temperature flames erupted from the mouth of the fire, and a white boil-style chakra was immediately added to swirl around it. The scale and impact of the entire technique increased accordingly, and it immediately suppressed the thunder and water dragon. This is not over yet. The boil-style chakra also invaded the thunder-water dragon bomb, which also surrounded it, but was constantly corroding the ninjutsu. Not good. The third generation was shocked. How could this little guy's technique be so powerful? That weird white smoke can also corrode chakra. It seems the only option is to stop him forcefully. Chewing a soldier's food pill in his mouth, Minato took a deep breath and took out his sword of ninja love from his ninja tool bag. Senior White Fang's information must be wrong. The child was obviously not caused by genjutsu. Uchiha's family crest and Sharingan, as well as the forehead protector on his head, should all be real. Although I don't know exactly what happened. But now, it's time to stop this. But at the moment Minato was about to start. Don't be impulsive, Minato-kun. A white palm pressed on Minato's shoulder. Orochimaru, riding a snake, has finally arrived. Orochimaru's voice is still hoarse and charming, sounding calm, but a little tired. It's time to catch up. So what's going on now? Why did Watergate attack 5 tails? Why did the teacher join in? Didn't the teacher receive his urgent summons? But he clearly saw many Konoha ninjas rushing towards the front line on the road. Or is this child Ruuo? Hiss, did this kid discover something about his teacher? Orochimaru's expression turned strange. Isn't that the case? Mr. Orochimaru. Minato was surprised and happy. Mr. Orochimaru was a senior he respected very much, and he was a strong man that teacher Jiraiya often talked about. It's great to see you here, Minato said happily. I'm glad to meet you too. Orochimaru's courtesy was impeccable. So Minato, can you explain the current situation to me? Orochimaru looked at his teacher. But I found that the teacher happened to look over at this moment with his peripheral vision, but his eyes were a little dodge. Orochimaru seemed to have guessed something. We were trying to suppress 5 tails, but this kid showed up a little out of the blue. The situation was urgent, so Minato didn't say there was no necessary pre-information, he only told the key points. Mission. Suppress 5 tails, seal 5 tails. Highlight. The boy Uchiha suddenly appeared and was confronting Mr. Third Generation. Orochimaru thinks he has solved the case. Looking at the teacher again, I felt inexplicably disappointed. He thought Ruuo had also discovered the teacher's little secret. My bugs can't get near him. Aburame Jiwei, who had been trying to support Third Generation's purpose from the side, suddenly said. I didn't prepare high-temperature parasites. If I just get close, they will be burned to death by the scorching heat. I just don't know how that child could bear it. Minato took a breath. Let me go. Lord Third Generation is already old after all. This kind of chakra consumes too much energy and cannot be delayed any longer. But just as Minato was about to move, the pressure on his shoulders suddenly increased, accompanied by a clear feeling of pain. Orochimaru forcibly held Minato down. Lord Orochimaru. Minato turned around and shouted in surprise, what are you? I'm doing this for your own good, Minato-kun. Orochimaru smiled and shook his head, looking at Wakahuo in the sky. This child is my disciple, not an enemy. Master Hokage was just worried about hurting him, so he didn't use all his strength. In just one sentence, Orochimaru defined this battle as a farce. And Mr. Ruuo is a very upright person. Once he is labeled as an enemy, it will not be that easy to take him off. But you have injured his companion, and the child is now angry and needs to vent. So, Minato-kun, it's better not to disturb him. After Orochimaru finished speaking, he once again met the target of third generation out of the corner of his eye. Third generation's eyes were a little confused. It wasn't because of Orochimaru's evaluation of Wakahuo's integrity, although this was indeed an adjective he had not been able to find before. The key is, Orochimaru, this evil disciple. How on earth can you see that I am still doing this with ease? Don't you see that I can hardly hold it anymore? Why don't you come over to help? Are you still chatting? Are you really an old man, or did you just become your teacher? I understand. Minato is a smart man, and he has long suspected whether the intelligence of Senior Whitefang was wrong. After Mr. Orochimaru explained this, Minato also solved the case. Everyone, disperse first. Minato felt a little guilty, but he made a decision immediately and teleported behind third generation. Are you ready, Lord Third Generation? Third Generation responded with his eyes. When everyone dispersed, Minato immediately activated the Flying Thunder God to take away the third generation. And the next second, without the thunder and water dragon bullets supplied by chakra, it could no longer resist Ruuo's little Amaterasu dragon flame. The hot fire waves mixed with white steam hit the ground. There's something about third generation. Ruuo was also shocked. Is this the strongest Hokage third generation project? It's a bit fierce. His small Amaterasu bombing can be said to have full output, but using a combination of ninjutsu to sustain it for so long is too outrageous, right? No wonder Uchiha was driven out of the core of the village one after another but dared not speak out in anger. It was not until the Nine Tails Rebellion that he truly saw the destructive power of Nine Tails, and finally had the idea of rebellion. No wonder Orochimaru would rather rebel than put up a coup. He waited until the third generation was 69 years old before he dared to implement the plan to destroy Konoha. He still had a lot of cards before he dared to fight against the third generation, and he was still worried. You will be killed instantly. The current third generation is only in its 50s. You are no match for this human being now, Indra. Five Tails Kokuo has stood up, and steam has begun to spray from his nostrils. Do you need my help? Ruuo shook his head slightly. No need, Kokuo. When I fight with others, I don't have the habit of calling for help. Ruuo made a judgment in his heart. Unless his Mangekyo pupil technique can be extremely heaven-defying, Susanna in the second stage will definitely not be able to withstand the bombardment of the third generation. This old man, who has no bloodline limit, is indeed worthy of the word strongest at this point in time. Xiao Ruuo, third generation, who had just withdrawn from the ninjutsu confrontation, just regained his breath and immediately shouted to Wakahui in the sky, "This is all a misunderstanding. Five Tails was originally the enemy of Konoha. The other ninjas don't know that it has become your partner. Grandpa made a mistake in his judgment in this matter. Grandpa apologizes to you." Ruuo didn't respond, so he probably judged the situation of several people. Minato used Flying Thunder God several times and felt like he had been exhausted. Orochimaru came all the way, covered in dust, not much chakra, and most likely not going to take action. Akamaiki Dingza and Aburame Shiwei don't care. So isn't this a great opportunity to test the third generation project's capabilities? Ruuo glanced at the other Konoha ninjas who were approaching in the distance, no longer hesitating, chakra mobilized, ready to stud. Do you know how to apologize now? Weren't you very arrogant when you bullied Kokuo just now? If an apology is useful, what should the Konoha Security Department do? Of course Ruuo will not choose to forgive. The chakra in his body surges crazily. I don't listen. Wakahara yells out in Obito style. You have hurt my companions. I've obviously told you, but you still won't let me go. My companion doesn't want to hurt you, it keeps dodging. But you still hurt it. Ah, Five Tails chakra has full power output. Will of fire, give me strength and let me protect my companions. Kokuo, this Indra, forget it, After reincarnation for so long, it is normal for something to be missing. Or maybe I found something. Snapped. Ruuo clasped his hands together fiercely. Orochimaru immediately sensed something was wrong. He vaguely guessed what Ruuo was going to do next. Spread out quickly. This technique from Lord Ruuo cannot be resisted. Quick, disperse. Quote. Teacher. Seeing that the teacher was unmoved, Orochimaru exclaimed. Third generation, however, waved his hand. Since it was my mistake, let me bear the child's anger. Puff puff. Shadow clones appeared one after another. Don't underestimate Grandpa Hokage, Xiao Ruuo. Come on, let Grandpa tell you what real ninjutsu is. And the next second, turn into ashes. The will of fire, the wrath of Indra. Ninjutsu has no limits, but ninjas do. If fire really wants to stud the great fireball, but forcibly injects too much chakra, the body may not be able to withstand it. After all this chakra has to pass through his body and then spray out from his mouth. So Ruuo only injected 100 times the amount of chakra and stopped. This is a great fireball with 5 times the basic power and 100 times the scale. Covering the sky and the sun, the fiery red fireworks blocked everyone's sight. The closer you got, the less you could see the full picture. Perhaps you could only fully see the artificial sun from 1,000 meters away. One thing to say, in terms of size alone, the energy ball that Momoshiki Chunin used to hit Naruto was probably not as big as Ruuo's Great Fireball 100 max. Quote. The target clones of the third generation disappeared one after another, and then silently formed a seal of lurking in the earth. Did you borrow chakra from Five Tails? Never mind. This anger. It's okay if I don't accept it. As we all know, the vegetation rate in the fire country is very high. The Great Fireball 100 max released by Wakahuo failed to test the third generation's intended strength. But this person's face was tested. The earth and forests held up this artificial sun for the third generation project, but a large-scale forest fire was inevitable. Fortunately, there is a big river nearby. It's the Valley of the End, where the statues of Hashirama and Madara staring at each other are located, and that fairly wide river. Although it is not the rainy season, the river water there is still relatively sufficient. Anbu and the Sealing class made a guest appearance as the fire rescue team, and with the help of Five Tails, they quickly put out the fire. As I said, my partner has always been very docile and loves the natural environment. Under Orochimaru's soft words, Wakahui finally calmed down, and pointed at Five Tails Kokuo, who was putting out the fire. Fire is a terrifying thing for humans. In front of a 60 meters tall monster, it is just a matter of blowing a few breaths or running a few more steps. Although the evil Iwagakure ninja sealed it in the human body, after it regained freedom, it had no other idea except to stay away from them. I don't know where the hostility between the white-haired uncle and the blonde guy came from. Five Tails is so docile, how could they have the heart to attack them? It's really abominable. When Ruuo said this, he kept glaring at White Fang and Minato. The two of them could only apologize and laugh in embarrassment, especially White Fang, who had caused all this misunderstanding, and was even more embarrassed at home. Fortunately, it didn't cause a big disaster. White Fang secretly glanced at third generation, who was undergoing treatment. Although third generation avoided the terrifying fire style in time, the sudden increase in heat still burned his back. It is considered a minor injury, and the medical ninja is helping to treat it. It's all a misunderstanding, Mr. Ruuo. Orochimaru patted Wakahui on the shoulder. I think they will compensate you, and your partners. Calm down, you have accomplished an incredible achievement. HMPH. Ruuo snorted and stopped looking at White Fang and Minato. Xiao Ruuo. White Fang wanted to step forward to explain and win Ruuo's forgiveness, but was interrupted by Orochimaru secretly using gestures. White Fang was startled for a moment, then smiled bitterly and silently retreated. This kid. Has a bit too much temper. With the chakra given by the tailed beast, even the third generation master dared to. Thinking of the fire style Ruuo used just now, White Fang is still a little scared. The power of tailed beasts is really surprising. For a fire style of that scale, only the tailed beast's chakra can be used, right? Fortunately, Orochimaru arrived in time. This kid doesn't even give third generation face, but he trusts Orochimaru very much. If Orochimaru hadn't repeatedly explained that this was all a misunderstanding. He also opened his hands without any defense, indicating that if Ruuo couldn't calm down, he could vent his anger on him as a teacher. Thinking of that scene, White Fang felt a little numb. It was indeed his fault first. Thinking about it now, it seemed like this little guy wanted to take him for a ride. I was really too nervous. I was running all the way here when I suddenly saw Five Tails chasing me. I first thought that Five Tails Jinchuriki was going to kill them all, so I couldn't tell the reality, so I thought it was. How did this kid do it? Defeated the Five Tails Jinchuriki and became partners with the tailed beasts. If Jinchuriki dies, wouldn't the tailed beasts be together? Ruuo-kun, tell me about your experience this time. The teacher has been unable to keep up with you. It seems that he has missed a lot of things. Orochimaru asked the thoughts of everyone present. Everyone pricked up their ears, and the third generation signaled to the medical ninja that they could leave temporarily. Is this okay to say? Ruuo frowned. Teacher Omu has taught you that the content of a ninja's mission cannot be disclosed at will. This is related to the core secrets of the village and can only be reported to Master Hokage. Quote. Everyone looked at the third generation project. Third generation's eyes twitched. You respect me now, you just used fire style, that's all. Third generation cleared its throat. It was burned when it was digging into the soil, and it accidentally ate some sand, so its throat felt a little uncomfortable. It's okay, Xiao Ruuo, Grandpa has approved it, just go ahead and say it. Quote. Ruuo rolled his eyes. Grandpa Hokage really has no principles. Quote. This is what happened, Ruuo said. Everyone sat on the high ashes, pricking up their ears and listening to Ruuo's story. My teacher and I were on a B-level mission, but we encountered several rats on the road. These rats. Wakao-kun, you don't need to talk about this. Orochimaru smiled. There are some things that obviously cannot be said now. Everyone looked at Orochimaru, including the third generation. Orochimaru shook his head silently at third generation, resisted the pressure, and smiled. You can start from the first race. Okay then. Ruuo shrugged indifferently. The teacher and I saw through the conspiracy of those rats and decided to support the team whose distress signal was intercepted and help destroy the Canopy Bridge. Quote. White Fang frowned suddenly. Destroying the Canopy Bridge, that was his mission. So his distress call was intercepted by a rat. White Fang looked at the third generation, only to see that the third generation was also frowning. White Fang realized it later. It seems that third generation, Minato and the others are not here to support him. The smile on Orochimaru's face remained the same, but this time he didn't stop Ruuo. I thought time was urgent, so I decided to fly over. The teacher also called out a big snake with the same dark aura as those mice. The big snake, like the mice, claimed to be the teacher's companion. We had a race to see who could reach Canopy Bridge first. After Ruuo finished speaking, he asked Orochimaru, Teacher, do you want to start from here? Quote. You don't need to introduce it so clearly. Orochimaru could feel that everyone's eyes were on him again. The rat that intercepted the information. Conspiracy. He also calls himself a companion. It's hard not to misunderstand something. It's also hard not to think of something. Third generation made a signal, and Anbu, who was on guard, immediately dispersed. Everyone realizes that what Ruuo says next may be a bit sensitive. Indeed, Lord Ruuo. Orochimaru smiled reluctantly. Let's start from here. Okay. Ruuo had a clear view of everyone's expressions. Since White Fang is still here, don't blame him for using Byationzui again. Maybe it's because creatures with the will of darkness are not very smart. I easily won the first race and flew to the top of the mountain where Canopy Bridge is located. That big purple snake was even 2 mountains away from me at that time. What a fool. If it was just a reflection before, then Ruuo is making it clear now. The will of darkness, big purple snake, combined with the so-called intercepted intelligence, and Orochimaru's previous reaction. Anyone with any brains would know who Ruuo is talking about. What a coincidence. Every one of the people present had normal IQs, and there were quite a few who had film-level thinking. Needless to say, the third generation project is also a future fourth generation project. Minato is also a future fourth generation project. White Fang is half of it. Orochimaru is a future audio and video and temporary fourth generation project. Cage. There was such a dark name that immediately appeared in everyone's mind. The third generation target's expression was as gloomy as water, and he immediately looked at White Fang. White Fang is definitely like this. His teeth are clenched, his facial muscles are tense, and his right ring finger twitches from time to time, all confirming that this, White Fang, is extremely angry. But White Fang was calm and looked at the third generation project. The third generation head gently shook his head. White Fang frowned, exhaled slightly, and nodded. White Fang still trusts this old man. Based on the principle that rescuing my companions is more important than completing the mission, I decided to destroy the Canopy Bridge first. Ruuo interrupted the flirting between the two. This way, those companions who need help can retreat with confidence. So I rushed down and fought with those evil Iwagakure. Finally, I used my will of fire to defeat the enemy and destroy the Canopy Bridge. Destroying the Canopy Bridge is a guaranteed S-level mission. Ruuo spoke in an understatement, and people on the field didn't feel there was anything against him. After all, the power Ruuo showed just now is still vivid in his mind, so he is mentally prepared. Ruuo was not very satisfied with this dull reaction, so he decided to change his mind. Then this guy with smoke all over his body showed up. Ruuo pointed at Han, whose body was warming up. His name is Han. According to him, someone tried to destroy the Canopy Bridge before, and he came to chase those people. Ruuo said seriously, but the Canopy Bridge had already been destroyed by me at that time, so I became his target. He said he would deal with me as soon as possible and then go after the other team so that he could deal with the third Tsuchikage. Ruuo didn't dare to make up too much. It would be bad if the interrogation department found out from his mind. But this does not prevent him from packaging himself. He is very powerful, stronger than any opponent I have ever encountered. Ruuo's words are true, if Fugaku and third generation are not worthy of each other. My Chunin fire will is no match for him, but in order to buy time for my companions to retreat, I still tried my best to hold him back. Ruuo recalled the scene at that time. I didn't have much chakra left at that time. Although I could retreat, in that case, my rescue mission might not be completed. He was very fast. I was afraid that he would catch up with the team, so I thought of a way. Ruuo paused, recalling the time when Han lost consciousness, and finally found the entry point. I was planning to use myself as bait and activate the fire prison technique when he attacked me, so that the two of us would be trapped together. I succeeded. Ruuo's expression was serious. He was so serious that no one would doubt what he said, and they had to subconsciously imagine how dangerous the scene was at that time. Fight Five Tails Jinchuriki, the tactic of using yourself as bait. And all this is done just to buy time for the companions to retreat. At that time, Ruuo seemed not to have become a partner with Five Tails yet. He must have obtained the Five Tails chakra. In that case, Ruuo seems to be a normal child. Maybe the talent is very good, but at such an age, how much talent can be realized into strength? Fire prison technique. Minato swallowed, feeling a little dry. It's the fire-style form of water prison jutsu. Orochimaru answered Minato's question. It's been a long time since you returned to Konoha, Minato. This child has a special physique in the same seal, but he can release many escape techniques in the form of fire style, but it will put a lot of burden on Sharingan. Minato suddenly looked shocked. This was the first time he had heard of such a physique, so the technique he just used. No, Minato realized something and looked at Ruuo suddenly. So you were planning to die together? I refuse to answer your question. Ruuo glared at Minato. You are not allowed to talk to me until my partner forgives you. Minato's expression was stunned. White Fang also laughed, but did not laugh out loud. Instead, he raised his head, as if to prevent something from falling. This character is indeed a brat. But such a naive kid was able to see through the conspiracy of those mice, and rushed to the Canopy Bridge at all costs, trying to stop the pursuers even if they died together. He may just know to get the job done. Follow what the teachers at the ninja school teach, follow the content in the textbooks. He hasn't experienced life and death yet, and maybe like other children, he only regards all this as a game. White Fang let out a shaky breath, being cautious and not daring to exert any force. I owe you a lot now, kid. It is said that White Fang has a glass heart, but isn't the so-called glass heart a manifestation of extreme sensibility? Teacher, please don't answer any of this guy's questions about me. This belongs to my privacy and is the top secret of the future Uchiha clan leader. Ruuo glared at Orochimaru and criticized seriously. I am a glorious chunin, I have enough will of fire, I can bear those loads. Teacher, you have to believe me. There is nothing wrong with my eyes. I can do it. Of course, Orochimaru did not hesitate this time and patted Ruuo on the shoulder. Teacher has always trusted you. It was the teacher's mistake this time. The teacher apologizes to you. HMPH. Ruuo snorted coldly, maintaining the pride that an Uchiha should have. Then shall I continue? Okay, Lord Ruuo. But this guy was too fast and too powerful, so he finally broke through my blockade. Ruuo continued, but found that the reactions of the people around him were a bit strange, especially White Fang, so he paused. What happened to you guys? It's okay, kid. Third generation also came over and wanted to rub Ruuo's head. But Ruuo directly dodged Pan Jodan and successfully avoided it. Third generation put his hand in the air without any embarrassment, and followed Orochimaru's example and patted Wakahiro on the shoulder. Good boy, you are a good boy. I know, Ruuo said matter-of-factly, my grandma often says that. Then let's continue talking about me hearing the call of 5 tails. Ruuo continued, I heard a strange voice and it said it needed my help. Iwagakure ninjas are too evil. They sealed 5 tails in the human body and wanted to take over 5 tails' power. But they never thought to ask 5 tails for their opinion. 5 tails told me that as long as Han can keep borrowing its power, it can find opportunities to break through the seal and regain freedom. So, I tried all my will of fire and used all the fire style I had, and finally created an opportunity for 5 tails. Ruuo spread his hands, then 5 tails will be free again and become partners with me. I immediately shared the good news with the teacher. On the way, I saw the teacher being beaten, so I used the tailed beast jade to help him out. And then, Wakahiro looked at Orochimaru, teacher will know everything that happens next. Ruuo originally wanted to make up this story. But considering that similar scenes may make the audience tired, and there is also 9 tails Jinchuriki in Konoha, it seems inappropriate to map too many. That's enough. Orochimaru shrugged and looked at the third generation again. After Lord Ruuo introduces his new companion to me, I will use. Ahem. Third generation coughed and said awkwardly, my throat has been feeling uncomfortable recently. It was quite embarrassing. Orochimaru clearly conveyed the news back, but after studying it for a long time, he still made a mistake. So does the sealed-tailed beast still have the ability to send messages to the outside world? Minato thought thoughtfully. He had a lifelong girlfriend who had a similar situation, but he had never heard of the same problem so far. So why don't you ask? Minato glanced at Ruuo and found that Ruuo was glaring at him after he opened his mouth. He immediately smiled awkwardly, looked away and looked at Senior White Fang. Well, Senior White Fang seems to have something on his mind, and he doesn't seem to be qualified to help ask. So Minato looked at Mr. Orochimaru again. The considerate Mr. Orochimaru, as if he knew what he was thinking, asked before receiving the signal. Wakao-kun, how did you hear 5 Tails' voice? Do you still have any impressions? This is also a question that third generation is very concerned about. If fire can hear the voice of 5 Tails, then, what about 9 Tails? It suddenly called me, Ruuo said matter-of-factly. What the teacher means is, have you felt the chakra of 5 Tails? Or have you had any other contact with the 5 Tails Jinchuriki? 5 Tails Jinchuriki. Ruuo frowned. He's the guy with 5 tails sealed inside his body. Orochimaru pointed to Han patiently. This, I forgot. Ruuo looked like he couldn't remember, then raised his eyebrows, but I can ask for you. Without waiting for Orochimaru to respond, Ruuo stood up and looked in the direction of 5 tails, taking a deep breath. Mu, Wang, Kokuo. Everyone has doubts in their minds, but it is not difficult to guess that this is the name of 5 tails. What is surprising is that Wakahuo, who is not Jinchuriki, can have such a good relationship with Five Tails. Boom, boom. Upon hearing the call, Five Tails immediately ran towards this side, and its huge size made the earth tremble. Everyone's expressions gradually became weird. After knowing the relationship between Ruuo and Five Tails, looking at this scene, it felt like a family pet running towards me. Even though the size of this pet may be a bit outside the norm. It seems that tailed beasts can coexist peacefully with humans, Hokage-sama. A smile finally appeared on White Fang's face, a smile of relief. Yes, I have lived for so long, and this is the first time I know that tailed beasts have names. This child is really surprising. The third generation exclaimed. Perhaps it was the child's kindness and integrity that impressed Five Tails. White Fang's eyes changed a little, he chuckled, and said, people always gradually lose these qualities as they grow up, losing less and less, and finally become the person you hate the most. Third generation was stunned for a moment, first frowned, then sighed, Tsukumo. It seems I have to ask Kakashi for help after I go back. This kid has misunderstood me. Kakashi is the same age as him, so he should be able to give me a nice word. Third generation nodded and agreed. Indeed, misunderstandings always have to be resolved. Yes, as long as the truth comes to light, all misunderstandings will naturally be resolved. Quote. Third generation fell silent. White Fang smiled and said nothing more. Stable. Ruuo raised his eyebrows. The Uchiha White Fang project is well underway. Boom. As Five Tails approached, it suddenly stopped and plowed 2 furrows in the ground. After it stabilized, it lowered its body and put its head on the ground. At first glance, it looks like a docile pet. Just a pair of big copper bell eyes staring at Minato, full of hostility. Well, Minato was stared at unnaturally, and he forced himself to show a sunny and apologetic smile. Kokuo-senpai, the situation was special at that time, Anyway, I'm very sorry. Minato bowed 90 degrees with a very sincere attitude. Five Tails Kokuo's eyes showed confusion, and he did not respond, or rather disdained to respond, but looked at Ruuo. Indra, what happened to this human? Five Tails Kokuo's voice appeared in Wakahuo's mind. He has been reprimanded by me. People in this world lack awe of tailed beasts. I will gradually help them recover. Ruuo is Kaido. Quote. Five Tails Kokuo was silent for half a second, and finally said it, I can't tell clearly, Indra. You have changed so much. I'm tired after fighting with my brother for so long, Kokuo. Ruuo responded fluently, this world is not what he wants to see, and it is not what I want to see. Compared with the previous disputes, I want to observe the world carefully and see how to make the world return to the way it was before. Is that so? Kokuo mused. Then I suggest you rescue the other tailed beasts first. We can help you regain your strength quickly. I want it too. I still want to become 10 Tails Jinchuriki, but I can't bear the power of 10 Tails right now, right? There is no need to worry about this. I have found my descendants. They all have my blood. It is very interesting to observe their growth. After Ruuo finished speaking, he turned to look at Orochimaru. Kokuo said that it sensed the strong will of fire in me at that time, so it tried to pass a little chakra to me. It also says that my will of fire is like a light in the night, which it has never seen before. Kokuo, is that so? Third generation nodded thoughtfully. If Huo's will of fire is indeed relatively hot, there is no problem with this statement. The key is the way Five Tails communicates with Ruuo. Is it necessary to pass chakra to communicate effectively? That's not true. Orochimaru looked at the thoughtful teacher and smiled. Teacher, Orochimaru reminded gently, maybe we should consider now how to provide a place for Wakaka-kun's friends to live. Third generation was stunned. When they set out, they were rushing to defeat Five Tails Jinchuriki, so they really didn't think about it. Tisk, why do you have a headache again? What's going on? Why does Danzo's face appear in my mind? Hiss, Danzo again. Third generation can already imagine how Danzo would react. He is afraid that he wishes he could become Five Tails Jinchuriki. Wakahuo-kun. Minato, who was still bowing, poked his head out. Kokuo-senpai, have you forgiven me? No. Ruuo was emotional. Kokuo was afraid of accidentally hurting you at first, so he kept hiding, but in the end, you gave it a tailed beast Tama. Minato's Rasengan was inspired by the tailed beast Tama. Kokuo said that tailed beasts are the most fair. If you eat one of his tailed beast Jade, the matter will be settled. Watergate. Ruuo couldn't help but laugh. Go complain to Kushina, you fool. Indra also misses Kurama very much. Uchiha Wakahu conquered 5 tails. Yes, you heard it right, Danzo. Hokage office. The 5 Tails intervention project officially declared bankruptcy. What needs to be dealt with now is the placement of 5 tails. But for Danzo and the 2 elders, it seemed that they had to take some time to accept the reality. Uchiha Watanabe became 5 Tails Jinchuriki. Danzo's one-eyed look was mixed with surprise and he asked repeatedly, Uchiha has a Jinchuriki now? I said. 3rd generation frowned. That kid helped 5 Tails break the seal from 5 Tails Jinchuriki in Iwagakure, allowing 5 Tails to regain freedom. That child is a companion with 5 Tails, not a Jinchuriki. Thinking of Ruuo's temper and the burning pain in his back, 3rd generation knocked on the table. Also, don't mention Jinchuriki in front of this child. He is very sensitive about sealing tailed beasts in humans. Hearing this, even Mito Kadoyan, who previously had a childlike filter for Wakahara, frowned. But it's inevitable, right? Tailed beasts always have to be sealed. Their destructive power is too strong, so they can't be left alone, right? As soon as I said the word stalking in Mito Gate, I felt a little strange. Stalking. 5 tails. So what are 9 tails? Domesticated. Indeed. After moving to bed, Kaharu glanced at Danzo, who was still out of state, and agreed, the top priority is to choose the candidate for 5 Tails Jinchuriki as soon as possible. Danzo's eyes were a little sharper. 3rd generation knocked on the table again. I told you not to mention the word Jinchuriki, at least not for the time being. Although it is emphasized, the tone has become much looser. The 3 elders looked at the 3rd generation with doubtful eyes at the same time. You don't understand at all. 3rd generation looked a little stressed. That kid won't let you seal 5 tails. Strictly speaking, 5 tails is that kid's trophy. Quote. But he is also a ninja in the village. He is Konoha's Chunin. Then you must obey orders. Danzo finally came online and slammed the table, making the folders on the table tremble. 5 tails must be distributed by the village, and the candidate for 5 tails Jinchuriki absolutely cannot be an Uchiha tribesman. Let an Uchiha control the tailed beast. Monkey, have you forgotten the Uchiha Madara back then? Quote. 3rd generation did not respond in a hurry. He slowly put the tobacco into the pipe, pounded it, pulled out a small tip, and lit it with his index finger. The child is now at the foot of Mount Kikyo. Orochimaru and White Fang are there, as well as the Minato team and the sealing class. Danzo, you can tell the child these orders in person. But don't blame me for not reminding you, it's best to bring more people with you when you go. Sealing the tailed beast is nothing more than to use the power of the tailed beast to the maximum extent while preventing the tailed beast from going wild and destroying the village. But compared to the seal, being able to coexist peacefully with the tailed beast and making the tailed beast become a partner of the village is obviously more valuable, if it weren't for Uchiha. Let Uchiha control the tailed beast, the risk of doing so is indeed higher. 3rd generation has actually thought of a balanced approach and is confident of convincing Ruuo. It's just that if this plan is to be implemented safely, some people will always need to bear the anger of Ruuo. Danzo narrowed his eyes. Comrade in arms for many years, you know my strengths and weaknesses, and I know your depths. As soon as the 3rd generation's expression appeared, Danzo knew roughly what this guy was planning to do. Monkey, are you sure that I will take full responsibility for this matter? Danzo asked coldly. Roots can take risks, and Roots has always taken risks for you, but Roots cannot do nothing and just help you bear risks. The Roots must also be profited from. I didn't say we were solely responsible, but since we can't reach an agreement, we might as well try our own methods. 3rd generation puffed out smoke. It's all for Konoha, isn't it? Ha! Danzo's eyes were a little mocking, but more of a fanatical one. In that case, I want someone with you. Danzo looked directly at the 3rd generation with his sharp eyes. You must agree. Ruuo Lord, let's just say, is it possible to change the conditions? At the foot of Platycodon Mountain, Kokuo was lying on the ground, looking at the weird human being in front of him. Minato finally plucked up the courage, and this was the third time he wanted to win the forgiveness of Wakaki and Five Tails Kokuo-senpai. Having been rejected for the second time, Ruuo almost asked Five Tails to prepare the tailed beast jade without saying anything at that time. That is a genuine tailed beast jade. How could it be covered up with such an understatement as, take a beating? Fortunately, Mr. Orochimaru was there, stopping Wakaki and providing him with some opinions, or opening up some permissions. Impossible. Ruuo frowned and said in disgust, I, the Uchiha clan, are the most disciplined. If you give me a sword, I will give you a sword in return. If you attack Kokuo with the tailed beast jade, Kokuo will also have to use the tailed beast jade to attack you. Quote, from now on, we will make a clean break, settle our grudges, and owe each other nothing. Ruuo narrowed his eyes. Minato Jonin, you are also a ninja with Jonin's will of fire. Don't you even understand this? The truth is this, but our tailed beast jade is not the same thing. Minato was a little devastated, but fortunately he still had Mr. Orochimaru to speak for him. Wakaho-kun, the teacher thinks that Minato-kun is very sincere, why not listen to his suggestion? Quote. Okay then. Ruuo has always given Orochimaru face, especially after Orochimaru gave him the command that can purify the will of darkness. Ruuo gave Minato a dead eye, you tell me. Hehe. Minato gave Mr. Orochimaru a grateful look, stretched out his hand, and the chakra began to condense. Wakaho-kun, look, this is the technique I just used. It's called Rasengan. It's really not a tailed beast jade, but a Muji ninjutsu that was inspired by the tailed beast jade. With a sunny smile on his face, Minato said, I have developed and used this technique for a long time, and now it can be initially used in actual combat and has expanded some other uses. If you are interested, I can. In the middle of Minato's words, his expression gradually stiffened. Ruuo also stretched out his two small hands, chakra gathered crazily on them, and it turned out to be Rasengan. And you can control the pill with both hands. This. You. Minato's eyes widened, his language system was shocked to the point of confusion, and it took him a long time to scream, how is that possible? You are such a treacherous ninja, Minato Jonin. Ruuo looked disgusted. This is obviously tailed beast jade, but you lied to me and said it was the Muji ninjutsu you developed. What else is it called? Rasengan. Why, you think I'm a 3-year-old child. You think I've never seen a tailed beast jade. It's really interesting, who hasn't learned Rasengan for a few years? After Wakahui emphasized that Rasengan is a tailed beast tama, and once again asked Minato to take a bite of Five Tails tailed beast tama. Minato turned around and left, as if he had made some kind of determination. Not far away, he came to the side of Senior Whitefang, squatted down, hugged his knees with his hands, and closed them. Whitefang smiled and said nothing. Teacher, what's wrong with him? Ruuo asked. Perhaps he is thinking about the meaning of life. Orochimaru shook his head. Wakao-kun. Minato-kun is actually a good person, and he deserves your tolerance for him. Orochimaru fulfills the obligations of a teacher and guides. Some mistakes are forgivable, depending on the starting point of these mistakes. Like Minato-kun, he accidentally injured your partner. In the final analysis, it was due to lack of intelligence. At that time, he mistakenly thought that your partner was the enemy. Minato-kun also wants to protect the village. Now the misunderstanding has been clarified. If Fire-kun is in danger in the future, Minato-kun will also come forward. Ruuo spread his hands, but I've given him a chance. It's clear that he can reconcile with Kokuo's tailed beast jade, but he keeps worrying about it. Quote. Boy, Minato's technique isn't even as big as Five Tails' nostrils. Do you have any misunderstandings about fussing over things? So Orochimaru prepared to cross the topic. After all, there are more important things to deal with right now. Tailed beast, Uchiha, village. Orochimaru knows it well. Once this matter is not handled properly, it will definitely turn into a dangerous incident in the village. The teacher hurriedly returned to the village and left everyone behind to accompany Lord Ruuo. Isn't that the reason? Wakahuo-kun, have you ever thought about how to get along with your partners in the future? Orochimaru asked with a smile. After all, there seems to be no place in the village where this adult can run freely. It's true, Ruuo nodded thoughtfully, but when Grandpa Hokage left, didn't he promise to help me settle kokuo properly? There are many ways to place it, Mr. Ruuo. Orochimaru reminded. Master Hokage must consider the feelings of other people in the village. The conclusion he draws can only be the result of compromise. Does Mr. Ruuo have his own thoughts about your partner? What ideas can I have? Of course it will make you confused. I, Uchiha, am not good at fighting, but good at resolving fights. I want to buy a piece of land near the village. The bigger the better. Ruuo looked serious. Quote. Orochimaru blinked and entered into a rapid, Wakahui Ryu thinking mode. Buy a piece of land? Orochimaru asked. Buy a piece of land for 5 taels. Did you buy it next to the village? This kid should simply want to buy a territory for 5 taels to live in, right? Very good, this is in line with Ruuo's thinking. Although Orochimaru doesn't think this is possible. Yes, Ruuo nodded. This time I rescued my companions and destroyed the Canopy Bridge. These can be regarded as 2 big tasks. Indeed so. Orochimaru smiled and agreed. I will report to Hokage-sama that these are 2 S-class missions that Wakaho-kun completed, independently. As a teacher, Orochimaru is not short of money, and he has no plans to share his remuneration. There is also that guy named Han. He seems to be an important figure in Iwagakure village. Kokuo and I killed him. The village should pay us the reward. Of course, Orochimaru nodded again. This can be considered an S-class mission. What Orochimaru didn't say was that just capturing 5 taels could no longer be measured by a mission. Of course, 5 taels is Wakahuo-kun's best friend. There are some things that Orochimaru thinks it's not the time to bring up yet, at least not from him. This should be enough to make a lot of money. Ruuo's eyes lit up. In this case, my principal should be enough, and I don't need to borrow from the Fugaku clan leader. Principal. Orochimaru captured this word sensitively, and because of this word, he thought of a woman and her favorite thing to do. However, Orochimaru felt that he might have overthought it, and he asked tentatively, what Ruuo-kun wants to say is the deposit, right? It's not a deposit, it's the principal. Ruuo said more seriously, I'm going to use this principle as a bargaining chip to do something big. Quote. Orochimaru had a vague premonition. And this premonition is very strong. Ruuo flashed his 3 magatama and said seriously, Teacher, I have learned about a way to make a lot of money in the textbook. There is a special group of people in the ninja world. These people believe in a simple and special rule. Within the rules, all efforts may be rewarded multiple times, or they may become worthless. Ruuo lowered his voice and said in a mysterious tone, I already understand that rule. It is very simple. My Sharingan can completely control it. With only 1 million taels, I am sure that I can make this money fission wildly in the shortest time and save enough money to buy land. Teacher, do you think my payment for these tasks is enough? Quote. Orochimaru's expression was a little stiff. Good news. This time he finally caught up with his disciple's thoughts and successfully predicted his thoughts. Bad news. He really predicted it. Ruuo-kun. Orochimaru rubbed his brows slightly, always feeling that he had missed something, and the premonition in his heart became stronger. The things described in the textbook you were reading at that time should be about the rules of the 3 forbidden ninjas, right? Simple and special rules, the rewards will be doubled, or they may be worthless. Isn't this just gambling? It's not right. Orochimaru once again felt a little unable to keep up with his thinking. Since it is the content of the 3 forbiddens, with Ruuo's upright character, shouldn't he sneer at it? That's right, Ruuo said calmly. The 3 forbidden rules say this kind of rule is called gambling, and ninjas had better stay away from it. You still know? Orochimaru asked tentatively. Then Wakaho-kun. But Uchiha is not an ordinary ninja. Wakahara answered naturally. Uchiha is the guardian of the rules. Since the village agrees to open a casino, it proves that the village also approves gambling. Ruuo said matter-of-factly. The matter of gambling is not within the jurisdiction of the Konoha Security Department and is in compliance with the rules. And I have already asked the Fugaku clan leader for instructions. He said that my idea is very good and he is willing to fully support me. Orochimaru was still stunned, clan chief Fugaku. Suddenly, Orochimaru realized something, his heart skipped a beat, and he asked slightly nervously, Wakahuo-kun, you just said, have you consulted Chief Fugaku? Yeah, Ruuo nodded. When, just now. Ruuo blinked. Just now. Orochimaru secretly thought something was wrong. I asked Shadow Clone to go back to the clan a long time ago, to report to Grandma that she was safe, and asked her to leave me a meal tonight, and then I showed off my new partner to the Fugaku clan leader and told him come up with my plan. Wakaka ignored Orochimaru's gradually stiffening expression and continued. Shadow Clone also wanted to borrow some money from Chief Fugaku. Although they were competitors, Chief Fugaku agreed and said he wanted to see Kokuo in person. Counting the time, we should see them soon. Quote. Orochimaru fell silent. He looked deeply at Ruuo, stood up, and turned to look in the direction of the village. The same is true for Ruuo. Seen from a distance, it is vague. It seems that two groups of figures can be seen, heading here quickly from two directions. Ruuo kept thinking about it on the way back. Konoha, what will happen to Five Tails? There are two situations. Either seal it, become the second Jinchuriki of Konoha, and enhance the overall strength of the village. The cost of doing so may cause Konoha to become a public enemy of the entire ninja world. Konoha, which is already strong, still has the strongest tailed beasts, like Nine Tails. If Five Tails is added to it, won't this break the balance? Of course, Konoha is definitely not afraid. Not to mention that Konoha is now at its peak, the White Fang is not dead, and there is a Minato in the process of development. Although the only usable Sannin is Orochimaru, other ninja villages don't know about it. Moreover, these four major ninja villages besieging Konoha are the unspoken rules of war. Just fight, can Konoha still surrender? The second possibility. It is nothing more than returning Five Tails to Iwagakure and squeezing Iwagakure's war reserves by demanding huge compensation. This is also the most likely result in Ruuo's opinion. The current situation is very different from the original time and space. The Canopy Bridge was destroyed, and Iwagakure lacked an important material transportation route. This is a big blow to Iwagakure, who uses violent soldiers as the core of his tactics. In the original time and space, after the Minato team destroyed the Canopy Bridge, Iwagakure quickly gave up on the Konoha battlefield and turned around and started beating Kumogakure. Now that the Canopy Bridge has been destroyed ahead of schedule, Iwagakure is most likely reluctant to lose Five Tails. Once he agrees to Konoha's redemption treaty, it will not only be breaking his muscles and bones. One thigh had to be removed. And this is the result that Ruuo least wants to see. Iwagakure must fight Konoha hard. And the harder the fight, the better. It is best to unite other ninja villages in advance and unlock the final form of the war in advance, siege Konoha. In this way, under the pressure of war, Uchiha can enter the field early. Although sacrifice is inevitable, but fighting ninjas like the Uchiha clan originally relied on fighting to improve their strength. If you stay in Konoha all day, what else can you do? Isn't it that Konoha's top brass know this, so they would rather seal Uchiha than try to replicate the disappearance of the Senju clan? If there are 10 or 8 pairs of Mangekyo, and several Gundams are launched towards Konoha, third generation will take the lead. Come on, come on, come on. The two parties are getting closer and closer. What's interesting is, neither of the two parties seems to have noticed that there is another group of people moving parallel to them. The one on the left is Fugaku, bringing 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 0 JQKA, so many people. Ruuo raised his eyebrows. He told Fugaku that he had brought back a tailed beast, and he did not dare to return to Konoha for fear of affecting the security of the village. Fugaku, everyone was stupid at that time. I just confirmed the specific location and immediately rang the alarm bell. This wave, it can be regarded as the entire elite force of Konoha Security Department attacking. It seems that Danzo didn't bring enough people here. Ruuo looked to the right again. In the interlacing of figures, Sharingan captured less than 10 people in total. I'm really prepared to engage in political oppression. Ruuo raised his eyebrows again. Coincidentally, White Fang is also here. Orochimaru is here too. You engage in your political oppression, and I engage in mine to purify the world. After all, even the third generation item has been roasted. How can I still be afraid of Danzo? Aside, looking at these two groups of people, Orochimaru's eyes were a little subtle. Elder Danzo is indeed here. Just as Wakaho-kun said, Uchiha has also arrived. The arrival of Elder Danzo should be the teacher's instruction, which Orochimaru had expected. But Uchiha, since they were able to leave the village, the teacher naturally knew about it. But the teacher didn't stop him. So, does it mean to ask him to go to mediate? The corner of Orochimaru's mouth curled up slightly. Is this a test before becoming the target of the fourth generation? Teacher. Wakahui's call interrupted Orochimaru's train of thought. What's wrong, Wakahuo-kun? Orochimaru turned to look at Wakahuo. But I found that Ruuo's expression had become very serious. I feel a strong aura of darkness. These rats really can't hold it back anymore. Orochimaru was silent. It's still so far away. You can feel it. If the aura of darkness really exists, then it can only be Elder Danzo who has not yet arrived here. Orochimaru frowned slightly, wondering if it was an illusion. This kid seems to have been targeting Elder Danzo. Is it really his so-called, quantifiable, will of fire, that is at work? It seems that can only be the case. After all, even the tailed beasts can detect this child's will of fire. Orochimaru suddenly felt troubled. Although he did have the idea of leading Uchiha to become Danzo's enemy before, now it is indeed a good opportunity. But hostility does not mean war. Once this child takes action, he will definitely fight to the death, and the situation will be irreversible. Teacher, let me meet these gutter rats. Ruuo geared up. They must not know that their conspiracy has been discovered by us yet. This is a good opportunity for us. I can already feel my will of fire burning. Calm down first, little one. Another voice sounded, not Orochimaru, but White Fang, who had appeared at some point. Orochimaru's face immediately regained the smile he had cultivated over the past 2 years, and gave White Fang a look of thanks. Although the White Fang is also Orochimaru's competitor for the purpose of becoming the fourth generation. But the relationship between the two has always been good, with mutual appreciation and mutual recognition. In the original time and space, Orochimaru's scientist transformation was also related to Tsukumo's suicide. The appearance of White Fang may be able to temporarily postpone the conflict that is likely to break out. What are you doing? Kokuo hasn't forgiven you yet. I don't really want to talk to you. Ruuo said with disgust. Haha, don't be so angry, little guy. I was blown away by Kokuo as soon as I met you. Isn't this considered punishment? White Fang has a hearty smile and seems to be very good at coaxing children. But before Ruuo could say anything, he glanced at Orochimaru, and White Fang's expression quickly became serious again. To be honest, little guy, the dark will of those guys is indeed a bit strong, but I didn't expect you to be able to find it. White Fang said seriously. Orochimaru frowned slightly, feeling bad. White Fang seems to be coaxing a child, but why does it sound? Hey, did you notice it too? Ruuo made a sound in surprise, as if he had discovered something extraordinary. Looking around White Fang suspiciously, Ruuo finally nodded and commented, Uncle, it seems that your will of fire is also very strong. White Fang cleared his throat pretentiously after receiving Ruuo's approval. Little guy, it seems that Uncle needs to introduce himself. White Fang turned around and looked at the figures heading here on the right, his eyes getting colder. Uncle, I am someone who specializes in cleaning up the darkness in Konoha. From White Fang's tone, Orochimaru could already feel a faint killing intent. This was something I had never felt in Ruuo. Every time Ruuo takes action, he is extremely straightforward, using his extremely hot will of fire to burn everything. And White Fang, he is that sharp blade, the White Fangs that bite at the enemy's vital points. No doubt, White Fang has guessed something. Orochimaru also has reason to suspect that White Fang also plans to get something back. And with the character of Elder Danzo. Tsukumo-kun. Orochimaru looked at White Fang's back and frowned. Don't worry, Orochimaru-san. I'm also going to let Kakashi practice his sword skills to see if he can catch up with this kid, haha. White Fang turned around and smiled heartily, then disappeared in an instant. He went straight to Danzo. Orochimaru was not very reassured. The teacher's test is already very clear. He needs to solve this incident perfectly. No matter what the time is, at least no conflict can break out today. Then I'll have to give in, Elder Danzo. Single quote. Orochimaru made a quick decision. Orochimaru has never been one to hesitate, because he can always find the path that is most beneficial to him in the shortest time. Including now. Captain Minato. Orochimaru called. He had the authority to order the Minato team. Whoosh. All members of the Minato team arrived immediately. Among them, the Captain Minato was 3 meters away from Wakahui. He secretly glanced at Wakahui but was stared back. He quickly looked at Orochimaru. Lord Orochimaru. Orochimaru nodded and pointed to the group of people on the left. Chief Fugaku of the Uchiha clan has gone in the wrong direction. Please guide them so that they can meet up with Elder Danzo. We'll get there later. After saying that, Orochimaru walked towards Minato, patted his shoulder lightly, and said softly, "No matter what happens, remember to protect Elder Danzo first." Minato's expression condensed. Yes. The Minato team also set off. Their speed is no slower than White Fang. Orochimaru estimated the distance and time. As long as White Fang didn't attack when they met, he should be able to make it in time. And with White Fang's character, he shouldn't do such an impulsive thing regardless of Kakashi's safety. On one side are the heads of the Uchiha clan, plus Tsukumo-kun, should they be able to make you retreat in spite of the difficulties, right? Elder Danzo. Then only the little guy next to me is left. Orochimaru looked at Wakahui. Lord Ruuo, do you still remember what I said to you before your first race with Wan Shi? Ruuo nodded immediately and answered simply, Teacher said that if we encounter those rats with dark wool again, I can directly purify them. Ruuo saw Orochimaru's layout just now clearly. First, he stopped the Uchiha from joining him in Five Tails, and then told Minato to put Danzo's safety first. Isn't this just protecting Danzo? It seems that Orochimaru, who now only wants to become the 4th generation, knows his teacher very well. Everyone knows that they have to protect their teacher's little heart. Interesting. That's right, Mr. Ruuo. Orochimaru smiled and said, these rats are everywhere and are good at hiding. They have infiltrated the top management of Konoha and are extremely harmful to Konoha. But Mr. Hokage thinks, Master Hokage. Why do you allow these rats to be so rampant? You know, Lord Hokage is the one with the strongest will of fire in all of Konoha. Quote. Ruuo didn't respond, but silently wrote down in his notebook, Orochimaru's awakening progress, returned to 0. True, Orochimaru seems to be even more capable of deceiving people than before. But these skills seem to have been mastered by Orochimaru. Orochimaru's current purpose seems to be very simple. He really wants to become the 4th Hokage, and even deceives children to vote for him. You should have guessed it, right? Lord Ruuo. In Orochimaru's eyes, Wakahui's silence obviously turned into a sign of thinking. Orochimaru continued to guide. Master Hokage has his own layout and plan. He needs to make these rats relax their vigilance so that they can be wiped out all at once. You know, some rats will wear the will of fire to confuse other ninjas who have the will of fire. Quote. Ruuo felt scolded, but he had no proof. I understand, teacher. Ruuo nodded. You have to trust Grandpa Hokage, right? Lord Ruuo is so smart. Orochimaru patted Wakahuo's shoulder. Don't worry Wakahuo-kun, when the day comes when Master Hokage locks the list of all rats, Wakahuo-kun will be able to unleash his will of fire to his heart's content. But before that, if Mr. Ruuo finds traces of rats in the village, please be patient. After all, the darkness before dawn is always worth waiting for, isn't it? Quote. Ruuo said nothing and just nodded. Orochimaru also nodded with satisfaction and smiled from the bottom of his heart. Sure enough, it is not difficult to convince this child after mastering his way of thinking. But Orochimaru's smile didn't last long. Then let's set off, Lord Ruuo. Orochimaru smiled and said, go and enjoy the performance of those mice. Quote. Ruuo nodded silently, turned around, and jumped on Five Tails' head. But at the moment Five Tails' kokuo stood up, Ruuo suddenly realized it later and shouted, oh no. Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. Orochimaru's expression froze. What happened? Did he miss something? Teacher, we may have been fooled. Orochimaru's heart skipped a beat. Was he fooled? What were you fooled into? Whose fault? What on earth did you think of again? Wakahuo-kun. Orochimaru tried to slow down his voice, trying to make Wakahuo calm down. But obviously, Ruuo can't be calm at all now, or he is very calm. I've finally found your loophole, you lazy snake. It's the blonde guy. Teacher, Ruuo shouted, very anxious. The blonde guy. Minato. What's wrong with Minato? What's wrong with him? Orochimaru habitually deciphered Ruuo's thinking, which also caused him to miss the final opportunity to stop Ruuo. The teacher's words just reminded me that that blonde guy is most likely a mouse wearing the will of fire. It is very likely that he will be unfavorable to that elder Danzo, and then frame the blame on that white-haired uncle. Under Wakahuo's notification, Kokuo has started to charge up and is about to eject. This hateful guy, why did he attack Kokuo after seeing my forehead protector? He is really not a good person. Teacher, we must stop him. Elder Danzo is in danger. Boom. With a loud noise, Five Tails Kokuo's mountainous body ejected and launched a sprint. The sand and gravel splashed behind him was comparable to an A-level Earth style. Orochimaru dodged immediately, and after coming out, apart from the roar, he could only vaguely hear Wakahuo's shouts. Protect protective Tuan Zhangqi fold. Danzo was confident before setting off. That old guy, monkey, is still so easy to see through despite his age. Doesn't he just want me to go ahead and put pressure on the Uchiha clan, and then he will step in to mediate and make Uchiha feel grateful to him? After so many years, he really hasn't made any progress at all. Without me, how can you continue to be a Hokage, monkey? Danzo is quite confident about conquering Five Tails. It is not difficult to put Five Tails into Jinchuriki's body as long as the sealing techniques are powerful enough. After the fall of the Uzumaki kingdom, the last Uzumaki princess came to Konoha with the sealing techniques of the Uzumaki kingdom. The sealing techniques launched by the Uzumaki clan, starting with the first Hokage's wife, Mito-sama, have demonstrated absolute suppression of tailed beasts. It's a pity that the monkey is too weak and doesn't want him to bring Nine Tails Jinchuriki with him. He only agreed to bring the powerful seal scroll that Lord Mito left for Konoha before his death. These scrolls may not be able to suppress the strongest tailed beast, like Nine Tails. But under the control of the sealing squad, it is not difficult to deal with the mere Five Tails. The monkey obviously miscalculated this time. When I become Five Tails Jinchuriki, what if I offend Uchiha? Even if we have been at odds with Uchiha for generations, what will happen? Do they still dare to take away Five Tails? Danzo was confident. And this self-confidence dropped by 20% when encountering the White Fang who blocked the road. He stood there with a sarcastic smile on his face, motionless with one sword in his hand. He didn't draw his sword, but the cold murderous aura emanating from him made all the genins feel like they were facing a powerful enemy and automatically put up a defensive posture. Hitaki Tsukumo, why did you block my way? Danzo is not afraid of White Fang. White Fang's son is still in ninja school. Danzo thinks White Fang is not that stupid. As for why White Fang is in this attitude, Orochimaru, he will pay the price one day. Danzo-sama seems a little disappointed to see me come back alive. White Fang said sarcastically. Danzo frowned, his eyes getting colder. So Orochimaru not only took the credit, but also exposed the roots behind it. Exactly how much was exposed? Orochimaru, I don't know what you are talking about. Although he had already criticized Orochimaru to pieces in his heart, Danzo remained calm on his face. And this confidence and calmness dropped a lot when a bunch of Uchiha appeared one after another. Uchiha Fugaku. Danzo's eyes were sharp and cold, and without any regard for the dignity of the wealthy clan, he scolded, "You don't have the authority to leave the village, why are you here?" Fugaku frowned. As the leader of the clan, after being scolded in person like this, no matter how much he wanted Uchiha to reconcile with Konoha, he couldn't say anything soft at the moment. What's more, Wakahuo asked Shadow Clone to call for help urgently, saying that he and his tailed beast companions were detained outside the village and could not return to Konoha. Although I don't know how this kid brought Five Tails back. This kid's shadow clone also looked indifferent, and even asked him to borrow money, saying that as long as he gave enough money to the top management of Konoha, he and his partners could stay in Konoha safely in the future. But in Fugaku's view, what's the difference between this and being kidnapped and imprisoned? The most disgusting thing is that no one in Konoha came to tell him except Wakahui's shadow clone. My Uchiha clan members are being threatened outside. You ask me why I show up here. Fugaku glanced at the seal scrolls carried by several rude ninjas, and his eyes became colder. Kidnapping a child for a tailed beast. Elder Danzo, you really think I can't be bullied by Uchiha? Chan Zung Zung. The Uchiha boy band draws their swords together. The patriarch is domineering. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Minato's heart rate soared. Chief Fugaku, you may have misunderstood, Wakahara-kun. If Lord Ruuo has not been kidnapped. No, who dares to kidnap him? Minato Jonin, thank you for leading the way. Fugaku interrupted Minato. I know this may be a bit risky for you, but please don't worry. I, the Uchiha clan, have always had a clear distinction between grudges and grievances. We will never implicate our friends who have helped us, and we will never let go of anyone who dares to harm the Uchiha clan. Damu. These words follow like fire. It seems like you won't be able to survive today, Elder Danzo. White Fang also sneered one after another, silently thinking highly of Orochimaru. This guy is a really good teacher. If Minato can lure the Uchiha clan over and stop Danzo, then at least Wakahui's Five Tails partners won't have to be sealed for the time being. I can be considered as repaying part of the kindness. It seems that I have to find an opportunity to discuss with Orochimaru to see if Kakashi can also become his disciple. Parents can always rest assured when their son is given to such a teacher. Even so, Danzo was not afraid at all. I'm going to pass here today, let me see who is brave enough. The words have not yet fallen. Boom, boom, the roars sounded one after another, and a young but anxious voice could be vaguely heard shouting, but it was a pity that it could not be heard clearly. Everyone looked around and saw Ruuo riding Five Tails, heading this way like crazy. Ruuo. Fugaku was surprised and happy. Is this kid okay? Just fine. By the way, what did he shout just now? Ask for help. Little ghost head. White Fang looked surprised. Why is this kid here? What was he shouting just now? Do something. Wakaho-kun. Minato was surprised and relieved at the same time. Wakaho-kun is here. Mr. Orochimaru is also here, right? Evil Uchiha. Danzo gritted his teeth, his previous composure completely gone. This kid really wants to control the tailed beast to harm Konoha. So Danzo shouted, prepare to seal. The root ninjas switched formations again, and several root ninjas carrying scrolls directly pulled the scrolls away. How dare you? Zung. White Fang draws his sword. Control the field, Fugaku ordered, and the entire Uchiha men's team stood out. I can't stop it. Minato cursed secretly, turned around and rushed towards the elder Danzo. Mr. Orochimaru's prediction was right, the situation has indeed gotten out of control, and he has to get Danzo-sama away from this place. Boom. Five Tails braked forcefully, splashing a large amount of gravel. Ruuo flew out with the help of inertia, stepped on the fire dragon in midair, and swooped towards everyone. Get the blonde man. He's the mastermind behind this. Protect Elder Danzo. Ruuo roars loudly and is extremely anxious. Everyone was stunned and looked around without knowing why. The blonde man on the field. Minato, when did you? White Fang was startled. At this moment, Minato landed just behind Danzo, and put a hand on Danzo's shoulder, which was somewhat like cutting his throat. Quote question mark question mark question mark question mark question mark quote. Minato had a question mark on his face. The worst thing is. I see, is it you, Minato? Danzo closed his eyes. The killing intent on the field was a bit strong, and he couldn't tell who it was, but Minato was the closest and was the one who struck first. Minato's life experience is clean, and all creatures that can come into contact with Nine Tails Jinchuriki have been investigated thoroughly by Anbu and the Roots. Minato is the monkey's man. So you've still made up your mind, Hiruzen. Hey, you've finally grown up, old man. It's too late to explain, Elder Danzo. Minato could only bite the bullet and activate the Flying Thunder God. Although he didn't know what happened, Mr. Orochimaru could definitely explain it. Whoosh! Minato and Danzo disappeared. No one reacted. Including Ruuo. Fire-style Dragon Flame. Ode. Wakaki is too late to end ninjutsu. The high-temperature flames sprayed directly at the root ninjas, especially those guys with scrolls. Shiji. Ruuo screamed secretly in his heart. Because of Ruuo's previous voice. At that time, everyone's eyes were on Minato and Danzo. At that moment, Danzo closed his eyes and looked like he was about to kill him, which made people feel a little worried. After sadness comes doubt. Minato, is he really a spy? Doubt is followed by surprise. Because Ruuo's fire style has arrived. All genin, without exception, no one noticed the arrival of this high-risk fire style until Wakahui's dragon flame arrived. There is no greater visual disappearance technique than this. Ode. The high temperature swept through the crowd, and the root ninjas who had no time to dodge were immediately enveloped in flames, and screams came one after another. Oops. If the fire falls just now, it will rush into the sea of fire. Hurry and save them. The teacher said that Master Hokage will catch them all sooner or later, but not now. Danger. Suddenly, White Fang rushed to Ruuo with a low shout and lifted him up. Looking at the genin who was still screaming in the flames, White Fang frowned and said without knowing whether it was true or not. They can't be saved anymore, and I don't know what kind of forbidden scroll the genin has on him, so, let's give them a good time. Whoosh whoosh. White Fang threw out several senbons, accurately hitting the vital points of the root ninjas, and the screams suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at the corpses, and the scene became inexplicably silent. It's not like anyone would have a moment of silence for these root ninjas, mainly because the amount of information in just a few minutes was a bit overwhelming. Danzo and his men were carrying scrolls that were suspected to be used for sealing, and they were most likely here to seal 5 tails. But he was stopped by White Fang halfway. The Uchiha clan arrived in time, and under the guidance of Minato, they also met Danzo. Everyone can accept what happened here. Elder Danzo wanted to take 5 tails as his own, and Uchiha had the intention to stop him. After all, it was Wakaki who captured 5 tails. White Fang's position is unclear, but he seems to have strong opinions on Danzo's behavior and understands it. As for Watergate, Wakaho-kun, how did you find out that Minato was a spy? Fugaku finally asked. White Fang also looked at Ruuo. He was familiar with Minato. Based on his understanding of Minato, he shouldn't. But Danzo's reaction at that time was so. The teacher told me. Ruuo roughly judged the attitude of the people on the field, frowned and said seriously, the teacher has always suspected that some rats would disguise themselves as ninjas with the will of fire and infiltrate the high-level officials of Konoha. I noticed the strong will of darkness from a distance at that time, and this white-haired uncle also confirmed this. It's okay if I don't explain it, but once I explain it, everyone becomes even more confused. Especially Fugaku and all the Uchiha, the will of fire. The will of darkness. Rats. And they also infiltrated the high-level officials of Konoha. Why can't I understand this? Is the information gap between Uchiha and the outside world so big? Minato's 2 teammates, Akamaiki Dingza and Aburame Shiwei, were still in a state of brain failure at this time. Is Minato a spy? No, he took Elder Danzo away because of Orochimaru-sama's order. But Wakahui is still Orochimaru-sama's disciple. He can't lie to others, right? This kid doesn't look like he can lie to others. And why does Elder Danzo look like he's going to kill you at the slightest sign? Does Elder Danzo know anything? Is everything a trap? The two of them looked at each other in tacit understanding, and then invariably looked at their number 2 boss, Konoha Anbu Captain, Hatake Sakumo, codenamed Konoha's White Fang. Then they saw White Fang nodded in agreement and said, "That's true, I also discovered it. It was too far away at the time. I only knew that some rats with dark wills were coming, but I didn't know their identities." Ruuo continued. But the teacher told the spy that he wanted to protect an elder named Danzo. I knew something was wrong right away. Ruuo actually felt a bit pity when he said this. Going on further, everyone will know that this is an oolong incident. It's a pity. Minato just kidnapped Danzo and only killed a few root ninjas. I always feel that today's trip was in vain. He had no intention of killing Danzo. But he really wanted to take off the gauze from Danzo's right eye. It is said that it may be Uchiha Mirror's Mangekyo. Although it is most likely to be useless, if Shisui is obedient enough in the future and does not awaken the distinguished heavenly gods, it will not delay the transplant. However, Minato can fly Thunder God, so he may have gone to Konoha now, and it may be too late to chase him. However, at this time, White Fang suddenly frowned and patted Ruuo on the shoulder. Okay, now is not the time to explore this, kid. White Fang shouted, Elder Danzo's life and death are unknown. The rebel ninja Minato controls the Flying Thunder God, but he doesn't have much chakra left. It's still too late to pursue him now. Jiwei-kun. Yes, Aburame Jiwei responded instinctively. You should have some records of the Flying Thunder God technique that Minato left in the Land of Fire, right? Aburame Jiwei was silent for 2 seconds. He seemed to be in some kind of entanglement in his heart, but he quickly came out of it. Yes, but I can't guarantee that I can find them all. After all, he is hidden too deeply. Aburame Jiwei took sides. Ruuo's eyes twitched. Minato is so miserable. Yes, let's avenge Kokuo. When we meet again, I would like to forgive Minato and make things clear. Aburame Jiwei stretched out his hand and released a small group of insects. After being activated by chakra, the bugs magically turned into arrows in the air. Aburame Jiwei hesitated for a moment. Minato activated a Flying Thunder God technique, in that direction. That was probably the direction of Konoha. A blind trick. White Fang frowned again and made a final decision, not giving everyone a chance to react. He waved his hand and said, then pursue as soon as possible. Minato knows too many secrets, he must be intercepted. After saying that, White Fang looked at Ruuo again. Little guy, it's an emergency, can you give me a lift? White Fang blinked at Ruuo. With the decisive reactions he had several times before, coupled with this obvious hint, if Wakahara doesn't understand something, he will be no different from Akamaiki Tingza next to him. White Fang wasn't going to catch Minato, he was obviously going to find Danzo. Of course, I wanted to send Uncle back to Konoha from the beginning, but he insisted on doing it. Ruuo muttered and turned to look at Kokuo and waved. Kokuo understood and immediately lowered his body and lowered his head. Just as it happened, Orochimaru was almost there riding his snake. So Ruuo gestured to everyone, come up, unity is powerful. Fugaku pursed his lips. It's not like he couldn't discover anything. At least White Fang interrupted Ruuo and Aburame Jiwei twice, and Fugaku understood something. But so what? The purpose of the Uchiha clan's trip this time is to protect Wakahui. Listen to this little guy and let's go. Fugaku gave the order, all Uchiha, get on 5 tails. White Fang followed closely, taking Aburame Jiwei with him. Akamaiki Dingzao stood there with a confused look on his face. What should I do? I still don't want to believe that Minato is a spy. They have known Jonin since before school and have played together since they were young. If I remember correctly, Minato was only 2.5 years old when they first met. Are there really 2.5-year-old spies in this world? Not really. Why did they leave? Wait for me. Before Akamaiki Dingzao could react, he saw that Five Tails had already taken steps and strode forward. At this time, Orochimaru finally arrived. Orochimaru has never been so eager and strong as at this moment to learn a forbidden technique, Flying Thunder God. Not that he envied Minato. He just wants to cover his outstanding disciple with spells, and then he can catch this little guy back in time when he throws him away. That's outrageous. How on earth did he discover the conclusion that Minato was a spy? No, what is the situation with the charred corpse of this Jigen Nin? When that kid rode Five Tails and charged, didn't he shout to protect Elder Danzo? Is that how you protect yourself? Call. Orochimaru took a deep breath. Very tired, exhausted, physically and mentally exhausted, Rushing all the way from the border of Earth Kingdom to Canopy Bridge, and then rushing back to Fire Country from Canopy Bridge, a lot of chakra and physical energy were consumed, which was not unbearable for Orochimaru. When Tsunade and Jiraiya performed long-term missions in the Land of Rain, they encountered situations that were 100 times more dangerous than this. Orochimaru feels no problem even if he consumes a lot of food like today. But in less than 2 hours after rushing back to Konoha. Old man, did you feel this way back then? Orochimaru rubbed his eyebrows and even ignored the tall and strong fairway seat next to him. Orochimaru-sama. Akamaiki Dingzao raised his hand weakly. Orochimaru looked over sharply. Under extreme exhaustion, Orochimaru temporarily went offline at this moment in order to compete with the Hokage and meet the teacher's expectations to practice. His cold eyes locked on Akamaiki Dingzao, and the strong man suddenly tensed up, as if he saw a brutal lion majesty locking onto him. True Cold Lord Orochimaru returns for a limited time. Big, 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 big. Orochimaru. Sir. Akamaiki Dingzao tried to resist the urge not to run away. It's Choza-kun. Orochimaru's voice was still cold, but his momentum gradually became warmer. Hey, Akamaiki Dingzao stood up straight. Is this how Orochimaru-sama is serious? How scary. As expected of Orochimaru-sama. Dingzao-kun, can you tell me what just happened here? Orochimaru said calmly, but his gentle smile has not returned yet. Here, Dingzuo thought for a while and decided to start from the beginning. Shimi-san, Minato-san, and I brought the Fugaku clan leader and the Uchiha over. There was almost a fight, and Minato-san went to protect Danzo-sama. Akamaiki Ding carefully observed Orochimaru's expression, and after confirming that there was no obvious change in his expression, he felt relieved, but at the same time he became more confused. Then Wakaho-kun came. He said that Minato-san was a spy and wanted to protect Danzo-sama, so Minato-san took Danzo-sama away. Master White Fang ordered the pursuit, and they set off together with 5 tails, without me. Orochimaru fell silent, careless. It seems that this child has never seen Elder Danzo before. Because he knew nothing about Elder Danzo and believed that there was a conspiracy going on, he treated Minato, who had hurt 5 tails, as an imaginary enemy and went to protect Elder Danzo instead. It's really reasonable as always. If Minato was really a spy and took advantage of the chaos to attack and kill Danzo Elder, everyone present, including Uchiha and Tsukumo-kun, would be involved. You prevented another extremely dangerous disaster that would never happen, Lord Ruuo. Orochimaru rubbed his eyebrows. Whatever. Minato controls the Flying Thunder God. Even if he can't reach Konoha, Elder Danzo's life is at least safe. Although the conflict broke out, no one suffered any losses, only a few rats at the roots were killed. Orochimaru glanced at the corpses, and after calming down a little, he discovered some new information. Every root has a deadly chinban. Precise and deadly. The Uchiha clan rarely uses Senbon. Although the possibility of them is not ruled out, Orochimaru's first judgment is more inclined to another person. White Fang. White Fang was in charge of the Sunagakur battlefield during the Second Ninja War. Those puppet ninjas liked to use Senbon to make mechanisms. Plus, having just returned from the battlefield, he doesn't have many ninja tools left on him. Chinban. Orochimaru frowned slightly, vaguely aware that something was wrong. Looking up, Five Tail's huge body has shrunk countless times in sight, and is splashing with a lot of sand and rocks. Chase probably can't catch up. It's possible that Five Tails could catch up with Minato. Let's think about how to remedy it. It's a headache. Dingzao-kun, please make the matter more specific. It's best to be specific to every word they said. Orochimaru's eyes grew colder. You can treat this as the first interrogation, don't miss any information. This is also for your own good, Dingzao-kun. Minato triggered another Flying Thunder God technique, and it's not far away. The direction of the insect's arrow remains unchanged, but the size of the arrow has shrunk a lot. This proves that they are getting closer to Watergate. Minato's Flying Thunder God is indeed the fastest in the ninja world, but obviously, the current Minato is still a bit behind Five Tails Kokuo's strong hooves. However, the more he pursues, obviously, they are getting closer to Konoha. It seems Minato has a lot of ideas. Seeing Minato running with Danzo on his back from a distance, White Fang suddenly smiled. Ruuo also wanted to laugh a little. Isn't this the first time in their lives that these two people are so embarrassed? We are obviously going to Konoha soon. The Uchiha were silent, and Fugaku was silent analyzing the situation. Although a lot of information was missing, it was not difficult to guess something. At least the so-called spy, Minato kidnapped Danzo elders and went straight to Konoha's base camp. This theory is indeed not very reliable. White Fang seems to be deliberately hiding something. And if the fire, who cares? As long as Ruuo and Five Tails are safe, why bother worrying so much? Oops, something was wrong with Minato's secret passage as he was running wildly. The roar that was getting closer and closer. He knew without looking back that Five Tails had already caught up. Whoosh! A short sword pierced the air, so swiftly and accurately that it hit the road in front of Minato and Danzo. That's White Fang's knife. Immediately afterwards, Minato found himself shrouded in a shadow that covered the sky and the sun. The shroud lasted for quite a while, for a full 2 seconds. It seemed as if something huge had flown past in the sky, and then... boom! Five Tails Kokuo spins and jumps, landing hard, facing Minato and Danzo. Danger! The sand and gravel caused by the fall of this behemoth was comparable to that of an A-grade Earth style. Minato, who was already in a state of emergency with chakra, was unable to resist it. He could only grit his teeth and block it in front of Danzo Elder, using his body to resist the sand, gravel and impact. Danzo frowned. His chakra is abundant, but he doesn't want to do anything. Although Minato didn't say anything along the way, after leaving that place, Danzo immediately discovered that Minato didn't have any murderous intent. The ones who really want to harm him are these guys riding on Five Tails. Danzo glanced at the village that was not far away, and the vaguely approaching figures that were quickly approaching here. His one eye was unmoved. Back off, Minato. Facing Five Tails plus Uchiha boy band plus White Fang, Danzo remained calm and confident. I would like to see what these guys want to do to me. Roar. Before he finished speaking, Five Tails suddenly let out a thundering roar. Boom. The strong wind is raging, carrying sand, dust, and rocks. This power is comparable to a ninjutsu combination of wind and soil. Danzo and Minato were unprepared and flew out directly, hitting the ground hard. Catch that spy! Ruuo shouted and issued an order on Five Tails' head. Konoha Security Department. Attack! Fugaku. Hey kid, your ambition is gone and it's all over the floor. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The Uchiha boy band strikes again and captures the spy, Minato with lightning speed. Are you okay, Minato Jonin? Fugaku, who had roughly judged some facts, did not make it difficult for Minato. In fact, from the beginning, the only thing Fugaku cared about was the elder Danzo next to him. As for Ruuo, Fugaku could only say that this was not the first time Ruuo had caught a spy. The first time was in front of the Konoha Security Department, where the other party was identified as an alcoholic. The second time was in front of the Hokage building. Fugaku had reason to suspect that the more than 1 million Li that third generation claimed after the project included the medical expenses of the two guarding ninjas. And now, this is the third time. But no matter what, catching spies is a serious matter and cannot be slacked off. The purpose of the existence of the Konoha Security Department is to protect the stability of Konoha. So, just catch it. Anyway, it was the order from the White Fang. The most the Konoha Security Department could do was assist Anbu in arresting him. As for how to treat prisoners, that is Anbu's own business. No, it's okay. Minato calmed down slightly, feeling a little dizzy. But he still remembers his mission, he wants to protect Elder Danzo. But when he looked up, Minato saw Fugaku's 3 Magatama. Sleep, sleep. You are tired. You have tried your best. The 3 Magatama lullaby was so effective that Minato, who was already weak, suddenly became dizzy and fell down on the spot. The Uchiha next to them pretended not to notice. Fugaku held Minato's shoulders and said, the suspect Minato consumed too much, exhausted his chakra, and fell into a coma due to extreme fatigue. Escort him to Konoha Hospital as soon as possible, and notify Konoha Anbu to come and take over. Remember, Fugaku lowered his voice, it is not the responsibility of the Konoha Security Department to review spies. Yes, the 2 Uchiha responded and immediately disappeared with Minato. And Minato had just left. Ruuo looked at Danzo who had just gotten up from the ground with a puzzled look on his face, and then looked at White Fang aside. Uncle, are you sure he is Konoha's Danzo elder? How do I feel? White Fang grinned and said with a smile, he is indeed the elder Danzo. It's true, little guy, what do you feel? Quote. Ruuo pursed his lips, but shook his head. The teacher has told me that this is related to Master Hokage's plan to eradicate rats. It is the village's top secret. I can't tell it. White Fang was stunned for a moment, then he laughed heartily. This laughter also contains a kind of relief and some self-deprecation. Even a child can tell what kind of high-ranking person you are, Elder Danzo. Fugaku raised his eyebrows and secretly made a gesture to signal the Uchiha not to make any move. White Fang laughed for half a minute, or maybe he was tired of laughing. Then he shook his head and slowed down. He bent down and pulled out the knife on the ground, and looked up at Danzo. Danzo wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the back of his hand. How many years have I not seen blood? Feeling White Fang's gaze, Danzo raised his head, his eyes intertwined with White Fang's indifferent eyes. At this moment, it seems to be no different from just now. The hostile Uchiha, the murderous White Fang, and Danzo being targeted by both sides. Only this time, there is no genin behind Danzo to protect him. Minato, the only one who protects him, is on his way to hand over to Anbu. However, as long as the opponent is still wearing Konoha's forehead protector, Danzo cannot make any concessions. Not just because of power. These brats. I think back when I and my comrades dominated the ninja world, even your parents had to kneel in front of me and listen to orders. Why should I give in to you brats? The reason why you have grown up to this day is all because of the older generation of ninjas who fought hard on the battlefield. How many threats have I eliminated for Konoha in exchange for your peaceful growth? Plus the support is about to arrive. Danzo now couldn't give in at all. Hitaki Sakumo, you have disappointed me very much. Danzo said coldly. I had high hopes for you, and even considered letting you inherit the root organization, but I didn't expect you to be so useless and even have a rebellious heart. You failed my test, Hitaki Sakumo. Ruuo raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Danzo is, kind of level. Is this because you know your deeds have been exposed, so you are filling the hole in advance? In this way, even if the interception of the retreat signal is exposed, it will only become Danzo's test for the next successor to the root of the inheritance, but the method is a bit cruel. In the original time and space, White Fang died due to rumors and public opinion. Now it seems that it was indeed Danzo's handiwork. So now Danzo plans to show off his cards directly and label White Fang a traitorous ninja. Let's just say, this time, can White Fang endure it? White Fang did not speak, the smile on his face was full of sarcasm. Obviously, no matter how brilliant Danzo's words were, he could not provoke White Fang's heart. However, you should think more about your son, Hitaki Sakumo. Danzo said coldly, with a hint of ridicule, that child has a good talent, but in the future he may have to live in a world where his father is a traitor. The words have not yet fallen. Swish, everyone saw a flash of white light, and White Fang disappeared, then reappeared behind Danzo. Even Danzo didn't react. Thump. Wow. The first thing to react was Danzo's left arm. And the blood that spurted out. Now, do you think I have passed the test, Elder Danzo? White Fang grinned so cruelly. Ah, Danzo groaned, kneeling down on one knee and supporting his right arm on the ground. He lost a lot of blood in an instant and turned pale. He never expected that White Fang would dare to attack directly. Is this still the obedient White Fang? And suddenly this time. I see. So this is all a test. Ruuo rushed to Danzo's side at some point. Elder Danzo, I misunderstood you. You must have disguised your will of fire as your will of darkness to catch more rats, so that spy took action against you. So this is Master Hokage's plan. As Ruuo said this, before Danzo could react, he grabbed the bandage around Danzo's right eye. Kid. Danzo wanted to stop him, but he could only use his right arm now, but his palm supporting the ground was, accidentally, stepped on by Ruuo. Elder Danzo, I will bandage you to stop the bleeding. Please cooperate. Nani. In fact, Danzo had already closed his eyes in time, but Wakahara still discovered it. Ruuo took 3 steps back with a look of surprise on his face, and his eyes gradually turned to confusion and confusion when looking at Danzo, and finally turned into admiration and admiration. Elder Danzo, it turns out you are also a member of my Uchiha tribe. Fugaku. Huh. Chapter 51. Third generation just finished cleaning the burns on his back. As you get older, doctors do not recommend one-time treatment. You have to change the medicine once a week to ensure that there are no hidden dangers. But as soon as third generation returned to the office and sat down, it heard a bunch of news that caught people off guard. Minato was arrested by the security department. Sent to Anbu as a spy suspect. Danzo was detained by Uchiha Fugaku. Third generation stood up abruptly, accidentally touching the injury on his back, and suddenly felt a burning pain. Hiss, where are they now? Where is Orochimaru? The subordinates reported one after another. Third generation's expression gradually became uncertain. When Uchiha left the village, he knew it. Fugaku personally brought the Uchiha elite to support him. No matter how strong Danzo was, it was impossible to take Five Tails as his own. A certain conflict may break out between the two sides, but with Orochimaru present, even if a conflict breaks out, it shouldn't have serious consequences. After that, he would mediate and everything would be under control. This was the original plan of the third generation project. But plans can never keep up with changes. How long had it been since Danzo set off? First Minato was arrested, and then Danzo was detained. Third generation's heartbeat was racing. If Uchiha hadn't handed Minato over to Anbu, he would have thought Uchiha was going to rebel. Lord Hokage. Another Anbu appeared, knelt down on one knee and reported quickly. The ninjas at the route tried to rescue Elder Danzo by force, but are currently being controlled by Uchiha using genjutsu. The root ninjas under Elder Danzo are now out in force and are quickly approaching Elder Danzo's location. This Anbu has just finished his report. Phew, pop. A flare cut through the day and exploded in the air, and the fireworks gathered into Uchiha's fan ball. It's a blood-red fan ball. Oops. Third generation's heart shrank suddenly. This is the highest standard flare in the Uchiha family. Second Hokage has detailed records of Uchiha's research notes. The Uchiha clan rarely launches help flares. Most of the time, they only launch flares to show off and celebrate after a victory. And the signal flare in the sky at this moment is the signal for the general attack. It was launched by the clan leader himself, and it was the highest standard offensive signal bomb. Uchiha is really going to rebel. Third generation immediately took out the crystal ball, injected it with chakra, turned it on, and switched to the screen of the Uchiha tribe. The silhouettes of Uchiha ninjas flashed rapidly one by one, and they attacked at full speed. Non-combatants such as women, children and children gathered together spontaneously, all carrying light packages. The patriarch's wife, who was already pregnant, held a big loudspeaker and was mobilizing in the rear. Uchiha has reached the point of life and death. If they can't go home, then the children are the last hope. Quote. Third generation's face suddenly darkened. He turned off the crystal ball, and then slammed his palm on the table. What the hell happened? Hokage-sama. Another person rushed in, and third generation's eyes suddenly lit up. It was Aburame Jiwei. Aburame Jiwei knelt down on one knee and reported quickly. Danzo-sama is suspected of having stolen the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan, and it was discovered by the Fugaku clan leader of Uchiha. The Fugaku clan leader asked Danzo-sama to explain the source of the Sharingan, but Danzo-sama refused to cooperate. The root ninja tried to sneak attack Uchiha to rescue Danzo-sama. After being subdued by genjutsu, they launched a second sneak attack. 2 Uchiha ninjas were injured and 7 root ninjas were seriously injured by fire style. White Fang-sama and Orochimaru-sama are trying their best to maintain the situation, but they are short of manpower, requesting rapid reinforcements. After saying that, Aburame changed slightly and made a white smoke. This was just a shadow clone. Hiss. After listening to the report, third generation felt a little dizzy, and the wounds on his back seemed to be opening. Master third generation, Anbu, who had reported earlier, quickly helped. I'm fine. Hurry, gather the manpower and notify the Hyuga clan. Forget it. Shaking his head, taking a deep breath, third generation calmed himself down and immediately found the most difficult part. Since the teacher became the second Hokage, he has always restricted and suppressed Uchiha, but once a situation occurs, the teacher will not restrict him, but will even come to help. That is the limit of the blood inheritance of the Uchiha clan. when the Sharingan is exiled, Uchiha can pursue and kill the eye-catching ninjas and forces in the entire ninja world without limit until the other party returns the eyes of the dead. This is the reverse scale of the Uchiha clan and is an absolute taboo. The ownership of 5 tails is no longer the most difficult thing. How to save Danzo from Uchiha now? Of course, things haven't reached the point of no return yet. The Uchiha of today is not the Uchiha of the war, and the konoha of today is not the konoha of the teacher's time. As long as he is around, Uchiha can't rebel. But there's always a price to pay. Boom. 3rd generation slammed his palm on the table. Danzo, you are ruining my business. Teacher, why are Kokuo and I so far away? I see we are fighting down there. 5 tails. Kokuo's head is 2 kilometers away from the battlefield. Wakaki asked Orochimaru, who was standing next to him on 5 tails for the first time, a sincere question. Of course it's to protect you and your companions, Lord Ruuo. The smile on Orochimaru's face has returned. Although it looks almost the same as before, Ruuo always feels that something has changed. It seems a bit. Naruto's Chunin assessment period, epilepsy. Maybe you're just too tired, right? 5 tails was launched several times without taking Orochimaru with him. Orochimaru would always feel tired after riding a snake all the way. This is also part of Hokage-sama's plan to eliminate rats. Orochimaru smiled. Clan Chief Fugaku and teacher are worried that the rats will hurt you when they attack back, so they can only protect you first. Hehe. Let them fight, let them make trouble, and see how far they can go. As long as the child is not at the center of the storm, even if Elder Danzo is hacked to death below, it will not be the worst outcome. It's better than having 5 tails shoot a tailed beast at the village, right? On the way here, Orochimaru had already figured it out. Why was he left behind by Ruuo one after another, and had to pick up the pieces each time? Is it because 5 tails is running too fast and he can't keep up? Indeed, unless he controls the Flying Thunder God, he really can't keep up with the speed of 5 tails. But this is only an objective reason. The last ninja who mastered the Flying Thunder God has been sent away as a spy, and the lessons from the past are right in front of us. Orochimaru thinks. The reason why he can't keep up with Ruuo is mainly in his mind. Something is wrong with my thinking. He always believed that the accidents Ruuo prevented were impossible. This kind of thought restricted his thinking. Putting aside the facts, what if Minato was really a spy? If he had been able to figure this out at the time, would he have been able to stop Wakahuo at the source, or at least ensure that he and Wakahuo would appear in front of Danzo? Never mind. Orochimaru had made up his mind. From today on, no matter what decision his disciple makes, he will support it unconditionally. Konoha is just that big. The ninja world is so big. Let this child do whatever he wants, bravely break out, and let this child's will of fire shine on the ninja world. So curious. This child's dream is to spread the security department to the entire ninja world. If that happens one day, what will the world be like? The selection of the root heir is really cruel. Ruuo sighed. Really? Orochimaru was very calm. Yes, teacher, the white-haired uncle actually cut off Elder Danzo's left arm in order to pass the test. Is that so? Orochimaru remained calm. Ruuo blinked and said in a regretful tone, "It's a pity that I didn't have time to bandage Elder Danzo's wound, and I don't know if his blood has dried up now." Orochimaru was silent for 2 seconds. That's not the case. Elder Danzo has some experience in arm injuries, and he will always recover. Wakahui feels something is wrong. Orochimaru has changed. Isn't he a little sweetheart who wants to protect his teacher? Fugaku fired a cloud-piercing arrow, and all the Uchiha ninjas came to meet him. Danzo was surrounded by Uchiha, and the scene was like making dumplings. Why was Orochimaru not in a hurry? All right, if you are not in a hurry, then I am not in a hurry either. Ruuo simply sat down, probably assessing the direction of this incident. Fugaku became angry. When he saw Danzo's Sharingan, after asking to no avail, he did not hesitate to summon the entire clan. When the signal flare was launched, Ruuo was indeed a little surprised. The advantage of doing this is that it can put pressure on Konoha. But the disadvantages are also obvious. Fugaku is now in a difficult position. Danzo refused to cooperate, refused to explain the origin of the three Magatama, and didn't even bother to make up a lie. He made it clear that he wanted to fight Uchiha to the end. Uchiha has nothing more than two options. Either compromise with Konoha and bow down, or fight to the end and do whatever it takes for the dignity of the Uchiha clan. You can't just imitate that coward from Hyuga next door who tattoos their foreheads, right? Fugaku fired a signal flare. Obviously it was impossible to compromise. But Wakahuo doesn't think Fugaku has the courage to fight to the end. From the outbreak of the conflict to now, Uchiha has subdued double digits of root ninjas, but at most he only seriously injured his opponents and did not even dare to take his life. He didn't even dare to kill his subordinates, let alone Danzo, a high-ranking Konoha official. Danzo refused to cooperate, and Fugaku did not dare to be cruel, so there was a stalemate. The next step is to wait for the release of third generation. Single quote. Ruuo came to a conclusion. The third generation project will definitely not give up on Danzo, and it should pay some price to keep Danzo while also giving Uchiha a way to step down. And Fugaku has always been a hesitant character. In the original time and space, when Uchiha rebelled and so on, Fugaku chose the path of coup because he was forced by public opinion. With Fugaku's fake toughness character, if the third generation project asks Danzo to hand over the three Magatama and then fabricates a story that Uchiha can accept, Fugaku will most likely choose to compromise. This is not okay. Ruuo frowns slightly. Although the theme of the second 5-year plan is steady development, harmony and wealth, and family happiness, by the way, it penetrates into Konoha and starts Mangekyo. But after struggling for so long, Danzo lost one of his arms, and it wasn't him who cut it off. You always feel like you're missing a bit of a sense of participation. Ruuo was not very satisfied. At least let him kill Danzo, right? Although Danzo doesn't have wood-style cells now, he should still be able to get stabbed again, right? Wakahara has no intention of killing Danzo. It's okay to have fun, but it's not appropriate to break up with Konoha. He also planned to keep Danzo to target Uchiha to provide nutrients for the rebellion. But Orochimaru is now determined to seal him in 5 tails here, so it wouldn't be appropriate to break in. Then we can only use bigger moves in advance. Ruuo pursed his lips. He originally wanted Shisui to use this move, but judging from the current situation, it might not be possible until then. Elder Danzo is truly a great ninja, sensei. Wakahara attacked. Really? Orochimaru responded calmly, but soon felt something was wrong. He turned his head and glanced at Ruuo, and couldn't help but wonder, Wakahuo-kun, why do you feel that way? Because he is the elder of Konoha. Wakahui responded as he should. Besides, he is a member of my Uchiha clan and has activated the 3 Magatama Sharingan, which proves that he is destined not to be a dirty rat. I, the Uchiha clan, have always been upright and upright. This is the will engraved on the soles of my feet. If you have a dirty mind, you will not grow up. Quote. Orochimaru hesitated. He was hesitating whether to tell Ruuo about eye transplantation on behalf of Fugaku. Danzo is not one of your tribe, son. How can there be a person in this world who hopes that his entire family will die? The teacher's previous words reminded me that some rats in this world can use the will of fire to disguise themselves. I previously misunderstood Elder Danzo, thinking that he was also a big rat who couldn't disguise himself. Ruuo continued, but it wasn't until I lifted the gauze over his right eye that I discovered. It turns out that Elder Danzo has been covering up his will of fire. He wants to disguise himself as possessing the will of darkness, so that I can cooperate with Master Hokage in eradicating all the rats. Orochimaru nodded decisively this time. You were right, Wakahuo-kun. Appeared, that wonderful feeling. Impeccable logic, irrelevant facts. Since some people can disguise themselves with the will of fire, why can't someone disguise themselves with the will of darkness? After thinking about it, his mentality changed. Orochimaru, who no longer struggled with common sense, just felt that he was now enlightened. Teacher, I can completely follow your thoughts, Ruuo-kun. Quote. Ruuo was really surprised now. Orochimaru doesn't accept this move. Teacher, what happened to you today? Why do you look like a mess? Do you want to continue? I feel like something is wrong with the teacher. But it's all here. I always feel that Elder Danzo is very kind, especially after seeing his 3 Magatama. Ruuo said bravely, I can feel the strong will of fire in his eyes, which is the same type as my will of fire. I don't know if Danzo-sama can turn all ninjutsu into fire style like me. These words were originally intended for Shisui by Ruuo. After all, Shisui is a descendant of Uchiha Kagami, and Uchiha Kagami is the only clan member of Uchiha who has activated Mangekyo in intelligence since the establishment of Konoha village. And he was Danzo's teammate when he was young. None of this matters. Wakuka originally wanted Shisui to hint to Fugaku that he had a special response with those eyes. Combined with Shisui's life experience, Uchiha would naturally think of something, such as stabbing his eyes in the back. Then the 3rd generation items will be useless no matter how you wash them. But now that the commotion is so big and Fugaku signal flares have been sent out, this matter will definitely be solved on the spot today. If Shisui is left to cry then, the effect will not be so good. So Ruuo can only do it by himself. What Ruuo-kun means is, Elder Danzo's eyes are the same as those of Wakaho-kun. Orochimaru's eyes sparkled with a different kind of light, and his whole body exuded a strong aura of thirst for knowledge. Wakaka's eyes locked on Danzo as if he saw 2 entities. Like Ruuo's magical Sharingan of the Will of Fire, there are more than one pair. Were there other Uchihas that were opened before, but were taken over by Elder Danzo as his own? That's why Elder Danzo wanted to kill Lord Wakaho even at such a high price. Ruuo swallowed. Did he use too much force? This Pandora's box that was finally closed has been opened again. Lowering his head, Ruuo looked at the crowd on the ground that suddenly separated automatically, and the thin figure walking towards Fugaku and Danzo from the crowd. That's fine. The 3rd generation project has come on stage to support Danzo. Then it's time for the real leader of their Uchiha clan to appear. Yes, teacher, Ruuo admitted. Although Elder Danzo is full of darkness, the will of fire contained in his 3 Magatama is as obvious as the candlelight in the darkness. Wakahuo patted 5 tails Kokuo, and Kokuo cooperated and spurted 2 streams of steam from his nostrils. Look, teacher. Ruuo pointed at the 2 streaks of white smoke. Kokuo also noticed it. Hiss. Who? Orochimaru took a deep breath. Then he bent down slightly and patted Ruuo on the shoulder. Wakahuo-kun. Now that the matter has come to this, the teacher feels it is necessary to tell you something. Orochimaru smiled. Do you still remember that night, the first time you met those people with dark wills? Before the arrival of 3rd generation, Uchiha's encirclement was divided into 2 parts. Danzo surrounded, and the surrounded genin. Lord Hokage. 3rd generation Sama. 3rd Hokage Sama. After 3rd generation arrived, the Uchiha automatically parted ways and bowed to 3rd generation. During this period, most of the Uchiha tribe still respected the 3rd generation as the strongest in Konoha. Not only does Uchiha respect the strong, but it also has a lot to do with what he has been exposed to since childhood. The 3rd generation is called the strongest Hokage, for no reason, at least with this political brainwashing. The 1st generation and the 2nd generation combined are not as good as the 3rd generation. It is no accident that Obito, the original time and space, was inspired to become a Hokage since he was a child. Hey, you are so tall. Very good. This knife is good. Hey, these little muscles have to endure a lot of hardship, right? The 3rd generation was not wearing armor this time, with one hand behind his back and a pipe in the other, nodding from time to time, as if he was walking on the streets of Konoha, very friendly. He is not here to intensify conflicts, he is here to negotiate. 3rd generation Sama. The 3rd generation finally walked up to Fugaku. Fugaku nodded and saluted, with a slightly helpless look in his eyes. 3rd generation glanced at Danzo, who was lying cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed and missing his left arm, and White Fang, who had his hands folded across his chest and had a calm look on his face. Well, why is this so? 3rd generation sighed, but probably had a clear judgment on the situation. Danzo, forget it, now is not the time for internal investigation. This kid White Fang, forget it, it's not too late to enlighten White Fang afterwards. Fugaku is a kid who is relatively easy to talk to. Although he succeeded the Uchiha clan leader at a young age, he also summoned all the Uchiha because of Danzo. But judging from Fugaku's reaction, this kid is also a general person. It seems that there is still a lot of room for relaxation in this matter today. Third generation Lord, Fugaku said solemnly, Elder Danzo is a high-ranking member of Konoha and is respected by others. I summoned the clan members today and have no intention of harming the elders and the village. Please understand, third generation Lord. Don't be too nervous, Fugaku. Third generation waved his hands. You are all Konoha ninjas, and you all wear Konoha forehead protectors. Many of the little guys in Uchiha were raised by me. The Konoha Security Department has maintained the internal stability of Konoha for so many years, how could it harm the village? In the final analysis, this matter is just a misunderstanding within Konoha, and I am here to help solve the mystery. Quote. There was a Konoha ninja on the left and a Konoha security guard on the right. The third generation immediately characterized this sentence as a misunderstanding, in a few words, trying to make the big thing trivial. But at this moment, Fugaku, under the gaze of all the tribesmen, obviously couldn't compromise. As the leader of the Uchiha clan, he could not let his clan's Sharingan wander without giving an explanation to his clan. But he is also the leader of the Uchiha clan. Fugaku also knew what would happen if he summoned all Uchiha to forcefully force the top management of Konoha. The old patriarch had repeatedly warned Uchiha when he handed him over. The strength of Uchiha lies in the past and future. The present, Uchiha is just a big clan in Konoha, nothing more. In Fugaku's plan for the rise of the Uchiha clan, there is no part of the current stalemate with Konoha. At least not today, not at this moment. But this does not mean that Fugaku will compromise on this. Just as Ruuo expected, Fugaku didn't intend to make things bigger, but he couldn't give in just because of the third generation project. Fugaku is also a smart man, and he clearly understands what this chaos can bring to Uchiha. More funds, wider family territory, more benefits. These are tempting, but Fugaku is still trying to fight for something more important. For example, retain control of Five Tails. Third generation Lord, Fugaku's expression never softened. Whether it's a misunderstanding or intentional, the Uchiha clan just wants to know what's going on with Elder Danzo's eyes. Fugaku turned to look at Danzo, his eyes getting colder. As the leader of the clan, I must be responsible for every Uchiha. Third generation's eyes froze, but he quickly recovered and said slowly, Fugaku, I understand your feelings, why don't you let me do it, Halfway through the words, third generation's attention was attracted by a scene in the distance. It was a fire dragon formed by the gathering of flames, flying staggeringly towards this side. Standing on the fire dragon was a young man, hanging under the fire dragon, and holding Orochimaru. What a posture this is. Teacher, I still don't quite understand. Ruuo worked hard to maintain the stability of the fire dragon bullet, and asked tangledly, those rats are all members of Elder Danzo, so why did Elder Danzo hurt me? Didn't he notice the will of fire in me? We are all Uchiha. Ruuo is very puzzled. This question may require Chief Fugaku to answer it for you personally, Lord Ruuo. Orochimaru held the chain with one hand, and chakra covered it to insulate it from the temperature as much as possible. Put one hand in front of your mouth, otherwise you will be criticized for speaking. Even though Wakaki is a shaky fire dragon rider, Orochimaru is stable at the bottom and is worthy of being a popular candidate for the fourth Hokage. The teacher had been worried that the rats would fight back, but now that Hokage-sama is here, Uchiha has also restrained the rats. Wakaho-kun, if you have any questions, you can rest assured to find the answers from Clan Chief Fugaku, Lord Third Generation, or Elder Danzo later. Orochimaru kept his hands steady and calm. Although the initial plan was for Ruuo and Five Tails to stay far away to avoid the possibility of intensifying conflicts. But now that Wakahara discovered the secret of Elder Danzo's eyes, then as a teacher, he can't sit back and ignore it. Things have become so heated. Then why not simply expand the situation and let the teacher make a choice now? Anyway, Elder Danzo will most likely not support him as a fourth generation target in the future. Anyway, He tried his best to save the life of Elder Danzo before the teacher arrived. Then, he would have to think about it for himself. Orochimaru discovered. As I gradually broke away from the shackles of common sense, my perspective on things became much clearer. Is this the world in Ruuo's eyes? It's really simple and easy to understand. Ode. The fire dragon dissipated after flying over the crowd, and Wakahui and Orochimaru landed firmly. Third generation Me and Fugaku frowned in unison. To say who the two of them don't want to see the most right now, Ruuo must be ranked first. Really. Wakaba's first words after landing put Fugaku in trouble and made third generation frown. Chief Fugaku, Grandpa Hokage, please tell me the truth. Wakahuo looked serious. Is Elder Danzo a member of my Uchiha clan? Quote. Third generation felt a sense of powerlessness deep within. The issue of Ruuo cannot be said to have nothing to do with the current situation. On the contrary, it is very important. It vividly explains the meaning of adults talk and children go away. But third generation certainly wouldn't say that. Looking at Orochimaru with some confusion, the third generation asked with his eyes, "Disciple, what are you doing?" Orochimaru kept smiling and shrugged, his eyes indicating that there was another 5 tails 2 kilometers behind him. Teacher, I tried my best, but this child is too irritable, so we can't let him stay with 5 tails, right? The one that shoots tailed beast Jade. Of course, it was impossible for Fugaku to say harsh words to Ruuo, but this question was really embarrassing. In fact, the situation is so tense now that any topic related to Danzo is a bit embarrassing for Uchiha. Fine, there was only one person who could speak at the scene. Of course not, Xiao Ruuo. White Fang appeared. White Fang, invisible, after cutting off Danzo's left arm, and now he finally reappeared. He looked at Danzo with his eyes closed in a joking manner, and said, "The eyes you see are indeed from Uchiha, but Elder Danzo is obviously not from the Uchiha tribe, and his Sharingan was transplanted. As for how Elder Danzo got his eyes, you may have to ask Elder Danzo yourself about this. When White Fang drew his sword earlier, it was not for himself. Ruuo tried his best to stop 5 tails Jinchuriki and completed the task that he failed to complete. White Fang remembered this kindness. So when he found out that Danzo wanted to seal 5 tails, White Fang made a realization. This knife was for Uchiha. Although it may cost a lot afterwards, it may not be able to help Uchiha keep 5 tails. But White Fang has no regrets, and White Fang can't just confess implicitly. He can't let go of the dirty deeds Danzo did to him. Unexpectedly, Ruuo accidentally discovered the secret of Danzo's Sharingan. Then this is interesting. White Fang became invisible and stayed by Danzo's side throughout the whole process. As long as Uchiha doesn't do anything impulsive and collapse this good situation, Danzo may not be able to escape unscathed today. White Fang's current mood is nothing more than, "I'm sure to take over Danzo, I can't even keep the third generation, I said so." Well, White Fang is the villain now. Single quote. After listening to White Fang's words, Ruuo made a decision in 1 second. So Elder Danzo is really not a member of our Uchiha clan. Ruuo said in surprise, but I clearly feel a very strong will of fire in him. Danzo finally opened his eyes, but still only opened one. The sharp gaze is directed at Ruuo. Disgust is the tone, but the main theme is shock. What on earth is this kid talking about? Feeling the monkey's gaze, Danzo closed his eyes again and refused to communicate. But there are some doubts in my heart. This kid can actually discover the will of fire in me. Wakahui-kun. Orochimaru patted Wakahui's shoulder. Is it possible that the will of fire you feel actually comes from the Sharingan transplanted by Elder Danzo? The focus is on Sharingan, the child. Now that we know that Danzo is not from the Uchiha tribe, Lord Hokage has started the rat eradication plan again. Shouldn't you use your will of fire to purify this filthy rat? This is a great opportunity, kid. Are you sure you don't want to go crazy? That's not the case, teacher. Ruuo shook his head and said firmly. Danzo-sama himself also has a firm will of fire. Although he seems to be enveloped by the will of darkness, I can feel it, really. Even without that Sharingan, Danzo-sama's will of fire is very strong. Well, is it because he can't suppress it after being injured? Ruuo suddenly realized, and then sighed, the assessment of the root organization is too strict. So, teacher, what does the root organization do? Quote. Orochimaru kept smiling and fell into silence gracefully. Quote. Fugaku had a dark look on his face and stretched out a hand to signal the clansman not to act rashly, but he couldn't help but want to kick Ruuo away. Don't talk nonsense, little devil. The root organization is Anbu's training ground, kid. Third generation smiled happily and said slowly. Anbu is a ninja who protects Konoha in the dark. He needs to undergo strict assessment and cruel training. Only after passing the assessment of Elder Danzo can he better protect the village. What a good boy. Although every sentence sounds so innocent and childish, it is a manifestation of a pure heart. It is precisely because of this that we can ignore the messy information and go straight to the essence to see the truth of things. Danzo's actions were indeed a bit extreme, but his starting point was all for Konoha. Speaking of the will of fire, Danzo didn't inherit the teacher's will. Third generation glanced at Orochimaru again. It seems that during the time Orochimaru was teaching this child, he was also influenced a lot by this child. Not bad, not bad. Even Danzo was a little puzzled. Of course I have a strong will to fire, but how did the brat of Uchiha discover this? Is it that obvious? But if it was to protect the village, why did Elder Danzo send people to kill me? Ruuo suddenly asked, and this question also made third generation's expression suddenly stiffen. Fugaku frowned and asked before third generation could speak, Ruuo, what did you say? Did someone from the root assassinate you? Twice. Ruuo pointed at Orochimaru. Teacher knows that there were many people here the first time who were good at wind release and water style, but they were all purified by me. The second time there were only 2 people. One was called Ryoma. He knew how to use bugs. That's what the teacher called him anyway. The other one is an orange-haired man. I don't know his name. He only knows how to run away. He gave me a hard test on the way, and I used the fire prison technique to purify him. Ruuo looked around and found that everyone had stiff expressions, even White Fang. The expressions of each of the Uchiha also turned cold, but due to Fugaku's previous order, none of them took any action for the time being. Ruuo looked at Orochimaru again. Teacher, I think it is impossible for Elder Danzo to attack me. My will of fire is so strong that even Grandpa Hokage praised me. There must be something wrong behind this. Ruuo said firmly. Either those guys recognized the wrong person, or their training has not passed the test. Danzo-sama is an elder in the village, how could he assassinate me? Quote. There was silence. Danzo clenched his teeth and closed his eyes as if in trance, but he already understood everything in his heart. This evil Uchiha, this is all a ploy by this brat and Orochimaru. This pair of master and disciple are totally incompatible. The situation is very unfavorable for Danzo, but the only thing Danzo can do now is to remain silent and leave everything to the monkey. Quote. Third generation can only remain silent. In addition to the White Fang incident, Danzo actually assassinated this child. Danzo really went too far this time, and his behavior had touched some bottom lines. Third generation is really angry this time. But no matter how angry he is, Danzo's life must always be saved. In fact, in this case, apart from saving Danzo's life, the third generation can't ask for anything more. Quote. Fugaku also fell silent. Although Wakahui was assassinated by the roots, this also made Fugaku and every Uchiha very angry. But objectively speaking, the current situation is very favorable to Uchiha. If Ruuo is assassinated, Uchiha will have another bargaining chip. But every word Fugaku says now may become a trigger for the tribe to lose control, so he must be cautious. The best thing is to let third generation express its position first, and then consider whether to put pressure on it. Quote. Orochimaru did not respond to Ruuo's question. He had already guided me secretly once before, but this time he answered directly, but it was no different from answering openly. There are some things that cannot be said on this occasion, especially when the teacher is still there. However, but what Orochimaru didn't dare to say, someone else did. Uncle knows the 2 people you mentioned, Xiao Ruuo. White Fang grinned, but looked directly at the third generation and said, "The guy who can use bugs is called Aburame Ryoma. The guy who compares himself to you should be called Yamanaka. They are all the personal guards of Elder Danzo, so little guy, you may be disappointed. Elder Danzo's bodyguards are the elite among the elite. They never mistake their target. They just rush to assassinate you." White Fang has gone completely crazy. He was like a big villain, mercilessly pressing the last fire of hope in Ruuo's heart to the ground and rubbing him like crazy. "Impossible." Ruuo's eyes widened and he shouted in disbelief, "This is absolutely impossible." Orochimaru's brows suddenly raised. Here it comes, this familiar feeling. His students possess extremely hot wills of fire. Every time they enter this state, those wills of fire will erupt like a volcano. In the past, because I couldn't keep up with Ruuo's thinking, I could only fix the mess. But this time it's different. Orochimaru secretly mobilized his chakra and prepared for action. As long as Ruuo can be suppressed as soon as he goes berserk, there is no doubt that he will become the biggest beneficiary of this accident. Not only will he gain Uchiha's friendship, but the teacher will further recognize him. Even Elder Danzo, the big rat, must admit that he saved his life. Although Elder Danzo may be leaving the center of power in Konoha from today. But Orochimaru knows it all too well. As long as the teacher is still in office, it is impossible for Elder Danzo to disappear. Wood-style experiment, will of fire Sharingan. After this incident, Elder Danzo shouldn't mind sharing these secrets with him, right? So, let's do it, Lord Ruuo. Burn him with your fire style and purify him with your will of fire. I see. Suddenly, Ruuo shouted and clapped his hands violently. Orochimaru almost couldn't help but move. However, he saw that Ruuo didn't make any move, let alone activate any ninjutsu, but looked at Danzo expectantly. Elder Danzo must be testing me, just like he tested the white-haired uncle before. Elder Danzo must have also discovered that my will of fire is as good as the white-haired uncle, so he sent those rats to find me. It looks like an assassination, but it's actually an assessment. Elder Danzo is testing whether I have the strength to purify those rats. Orochimaru frowned. After thinking for a moment, he realized what Ruuo was going to say next. His pupils shrank and he was about to speak to stop him, but suddenly he felt a sharp and cold gaze. It's White Fang. He had already stopped Ruuo from telling the truth once before, but White Fang obviously didn't want to stop him a second time. And not only White Fang, Fugaku also noticed something, and a pair of Sharingan also looked at Orochimaru. Orochimaru immediately gave up the idea of stopping Wakaki. The smile returned to his face, elegant and calm, almost without raising his hands in surrender. His eyes came to the teacher. The teacher also looked over. The master and apprentice looked at each other, and third generation gently shook his head. I understand. Ruuo pretended not to feel the exchange of glances between several people, and continued to analyze with determination. Elder Danzo intercepted Uncle Whitehaird's distress signal. The purpose was to test Uncle Whitehaird's ability to become the next leader of the Root organization. At the same time, Elder Danzo also believed that I could succeed as the next leader of the Root organization, so he tested me twice. The first time was an assassination, and the second time he asked me to complete the same task. Quote. Ruuo said, also looking at Danzo. Danzo had opened his eyes, still only one, but there was no doubt in his eyes as before, and there was only calmness in his eyes. Inexplicably peaceful. Ruuo blinked and asked with some anticipation, so, Elder Danzo, did I pass the test? The White Fang was not the only way to stab Danzo. If possible, if Ruuo wants to do this, it would be better for third generation to do it himself. White Fang's successive assists were expected by Ruuo. Cutting off Danzo's arm was White Fang's helpless move. If you don't have too many concerns, such as the so-called overall situation, such as Kakashi. Otherwise, if Ruuo had reason to believe, White Fang might even chop off Danzo's head. In this case, the more shit that is put on Danzo's head, the more White Fang will help, because he also wishes that Danzo would not be able to return to Konoha today. Now, everything is revealed. Danzo intercepted the distress signal from the White Fang team, intending to trap White Fang. Danzo ordered Genbu to assassinate Uchiha's genius ninja, twice. Compared with this, his Sharingan of unknown origin has become the one with the least sense of existence. Under the watchful eyes of all Uchiha, Ruuo has welded the knife to the third generation's hand and activated the GPS. With this knife, third generation seems to have to cut off everything. As for whether this sword from the third generation will kill Danzo, then it depends on how strong the relationship between these two brothers is. However, at this moment, an unexpected scene appeared for Ruuo. "You're pretty good, Uchiha brat," Danzo suddenly spoke. This was the first thing Danzo said after Ruuo took off the bandage from Danzo's right eye. He gave Ruuo a thumbs up as soon as he opened his mouth. But Ruuo immediately realized that this matter might not be that simple. Shouldn't it be some sort of deathbed remonstrance? "Before you die, would you like to remind third generation that this kid is extremely evil and must be eradicated as soon as possible?" "Ha, all the ninjas of the Uchiha clan are here, who can eradicate whom?" "That means Fugaku doesn't have the guts, otherwise the fourth Hokage would have to be selected tomorrow." However, Danzo did not do this. "I didn't expect that all this I planned would be discovered by a naive kid in the end. It seems that even the heroic souls of the ancestors can't stand my behavior." Danzo laughed to himself, and then closed his eyes as if resigned to his fate. "Monkey, it seems that I am destined to be with you until today. Do it, third Hokage. If I die here today, it can be regarded as an explanation to the children." Danzo's will to die moved everyone. Although almost everyone wanted to kill Danzo just a second ago, at this moment, no one refuted anything. Third generation Lord Fugaku realized that this was his opportunity. If he could be generous, Uchiha could obviously get more. But third generation also closed its eyes. "No need to say any more, Fugaku. This is Danzo's own decision, his repentance and realization. Let the children go back first. I will send him off for the last time, and I will give you an explanation later." Fugaku was silent. Ruuo also fell silent. Let's just say that the fact that Uchiha Madara used Izanagi to fake his death to escape was probably not recorded in the diary, right? No, you two are singing along. Do you really think that no one can see through the trajectory of your sinister spear? Development direction of the root organization. Now that the third generation project has said so. Naturally, Fugaku couldn't say anything more, so he waved his hand, indicating that the clan members would temporarily disband and go back to their respective families. As for the explanation given to Uchiha about the third generation project, we can only wait. You can't push it, right? Ruuo also wants to go home, and he also wants to take Five Tails back to Uchiha. But this is obviously impossible. Let's not talk about the possibility of Five Tails running amok. With its huge size, there is no place to stay. But I want to introduce my new partner to my grandma and brothers. My shadow clone has already been announced. Wakaki frowned at Orochimaru. I believe that teacher, grandma and brother can see Master Kokuo clearly even in Konoha. Orochimaru really didn't lie, because if Ruuo was above Five Tails, he could also see the Uchiha tribe. When Kokuo is fully up, the altitude is over 60 meters. You can see Kokuo from a distance even in a slightly open area of Konoha. Oh well, seeing that Fugaku had secretly asked a dozen Uchiha elites to protect Kokuo, Wakahuo immediately agreed. Before leaving, Ruuo looked at Danzo deeply. After clearing the area, several Anbu raised barriers around them. The last words related to the elders of Konoha or Konoha's top secret. Inside the barriers, Danzo closed his eyes again, like an old monk in trance, exuding an air of indifference, as if he had really accepted his fate. Should we inform the Hyuga clan to come and visit? Ruuo thought secretly in his heart. Danzo would definitely be reluctant to die. If he was really going to die, he would drag a few Uchiha backs with him before he died. What's more, he still has Izanagi. But Danzo must die. Because this is related to the credibility of the Hokage, if Danzo does not die, the third generation project will be equivalent to teasing the entire Uchiha, if it is equivalent to starting a war. At the moment when the Ninja World War is going on, the third generation is not so dizzy yet. Wakahui has already predicted the intended operation of Danzo and third generation. Elder Danzo will be sent away by the third generation himself, which will not only give Uchiha an explanation, block everyone's mouth, but also further compress Uchiha. At least on the issue of 5 tails, the third generation project has a greater say. But Danzo will obviously survive. If you use retreat to advance, you may be able to gain greater power secretly. I have sacrificed everything for you and can only live in the shadows for the rest of my life. Can't I make some compensation? This round, I think we're even with you, old thief Danzo. Single quote. Ruuo narrowed his eyes and thought secretly. At this time, Lord Ruuo, what are you thinking about? Orochimaru, who was walking beside Wakaki, suddenly asked. Well, Ruuo hesitated for a moment. I have recently considered challenging the Fugaku clan leader, and the future development direction of the Root organization. Come on, in the second game, I will play the card first, advanced version of stealing the sheep directly, please accept the move. Quote. Orochimaru pursed his lips and remained silent. My child, it's really hard for you to worry so much. I thought you would have some objection to the root tissue, Mr. Ruuo. Orochimaru couldn't help but said, and then felt that this statement seemed too common sense, and did not fit in with the Wakaho Ryu thinking, so he added. After all, the Root organization's assessment method will be cruel. Having misjudged Ruuo's thinking direction before, Orochimaru is still reflecting on it. Unexpectedly, Ruuo did not burst out the will of fire this time, which resulted in him standing as a subordinate in the incident just now. But Orochimaru never expected that Wakaka would insist that Elder Danzo also possesses a very high will of fire. So Ruuo's views on root tissue have also changed. Quote. Wakaki glanced at Orochimaru. His teacher seemed to be awakening more and more in the direction of being a swindler. Fortunately, he had also seen Orochimaru in his peak period, so it wasn't difficult to deal with it. It is indeed a bit cruel, but fortunately I have passed the review of Elder Danzo. Ruuo said calmly, but I'm not sure whether I need to have a showdown with the white-haired uncle in the future. After all, he has also passed the review of Danzo Elder. Quote. Orochimaru frowned slightly, trying to keep up with Ruuo's thinking. But didn't White Fang fail to complete the mission? Lord Ruuo should have an advantage. Ah, teacher, have you forgotten? I seem to have told you. Ruuo glanced at Orochimaru doubtfully and said seriously. Senior White Fang cut off Elder Danzo's arm in time to make up for the failure of the Canopy Bridge mission. He has passed the assessment. Quote. Orochimaru remembered that Ruuo had indeed told him when he was above 5 tails before. But that shouldn't be an assessment, right? No. If Lord Fire thinks that is an assessment, then it is an assessment. Haha, what has he been through? Who has been denying this child before? Minato is in jail, Elder Danzo has lost his arm, and now he is ready to sacrifice. Who will be next? It's a pity that Danzo-sama is about to die soon. Wakahuo said regretfully. I haven't asked him where the Root organization's base is. Quote. Orochimaru kept smiling and remained elegantly silent. The teacher knows, but the teacher cannot tell you. You can ask Master Hokage. Elder Danzo should have told him in his last words. Yes, Ruuo's eyes lit up. I still have to discuss buying land with Grandpa Hokage. By the way, teacher, can I really get a reward of 1 million taels for the tasks I completed? I don't know about this, teacher. After all, the teacher has never completed so many S-level tasks in one go. Orochimaru said with a smile. That's it. Well, I don't know if Elder Danzo has left enough funds for me. Ruuo shrugged. If it's really not enough, I will have to look for the Hyuga clan. Hyuga clan. This is Orochimaru's knowledge blind spot. Uchiha is short of money, and goes to Hyuga. Hiss, it does seem to be a bit of a Root style. Well, they injured Obito before, but they only paid me 100,000 taels. I did the math. They still owe me about 800,000 taels with interest. If they plan to continue to default on their debts, I will ask Kokuo to help collect the debt. Quote. It sounds like this is a conflict between Uchiha and Hyuga. Orochimaru wanted nothing to do with this topic. However, when it comes to 5 taels, as the child's teacher, I can't escape this problem. The top management of Konoha will not let Uchiha have control over Five Tails. Although Elder Danzo has paid the price of his life for this, there will certainly not be any change in this policy. This will also be the second round of confrontation between Uchiha and Konoha, but in Orochimaru's view, the core of the problem still lies with Wakahui. After all, even if the teacher convinces Fugaku, if Ruuo doesn't agree, there is a high probability that Wakaka will ride Five Tails and challenge Fugaku for the position of clan leader on the spot. Grandma, Obito, I'm back. Brother, Obito, who had already returned home from school, jumped directly from the second-floor window. Yo, Ruuo suddenly remembered an ancient news piece he had seen in his previous life. A man came home from a business trip and his dog jumped off the balcony. As a result, the man had 4 ribs fractured and he was hospitalized for 3 weeks before he could barely get out of bed. But this obviously won't happen to them. I saw Obito tumbling in the air to relieve a lot of force, and immediately jumped up after landing. You are back, brother. Okay, come down quickly. Brother brought you a gift. Upon hearing that there was a gift, Obito immediately became excited. A gift? Yeah, Ruuo patted the ninja bag, and there was a jingle inside. Brother, I have captured a lot of good things this time. Wakahuo-kun. Orochimaru behind him reminded him appropriately. Why don't you introduce me to the teacher? Yes, Orochimaru hasn't left yet. Just like Fugaku gave the order to guard Five Tails with his eyes when he dismissed the tribe. Orochimaru also received orders from the 3rd generation, watch over Wakahu. Orochimaru knows that this is probably to prepare for the next Five Tails negotiation. On the way back to Konoha, Orochimaru saw many Konoha ninjas rushing to the front line, and they were all running at full speed and traveling lightly. Orochimaru deduced that Konoha's defensive strength should be relatively empty at this time. So the next negotiation will definitely be very sensitive and critical. Oh, this is my second brother, Uchiha Obito. Obito, call the teacher quickly. Ruuo patted the back of Obito's head. Obito immediately bowed 90 degrees, hello, teacher. Then he immediately turned to look at his elder brother. Brother, what's in there? Are there any shurikens? The information. I've given it to you. There's also a space scroll in it. I'll teach you the seal later. Space scroll. That one is very expensive, brother. What's this? Ruuo turned his head and looked in the direction of Five Tails, but the distance was too far and there were too many obstructions, so he really couldn't see it. Wait, tomorrow, I will introduce you to a new partner. His name is Kokuo, he is a big guy. Big guy, bigger than that Akamaiki from 5th grade. Oh, you will know tomorrow. The two brothers exchanged words with each other, walked back home arm in arm, and then closed the door with a bang. Quote. Orochimaru was left hanging at the door, maintaining the most elegant smile. Inside the house, as soon as they entered the room, the expressions on the two brothers' faces immediately changed. The excitement on Obito's face disappeared, replaced by full of nervousness. Brother, isn't that guy your teacher? Why, the two brothers have been hanging out in the Uchiha neighborhood for so many years, done so many things, and caused so many troubles. How can they not have some tacit understanding? There are more than a dozen options for how hard and where to hit Obito on the back of the head. Keep your voice down. Ruuo also looked serious. It's true that he is my teacher, but this guy is very dangerous. You must be careful when you see him in the future. Don't believe anything he says. Just pretend to agree to whatever he asks you to do, and then run away. Find me, you know. I got it. Obito nodded hastily and thought of something else. I will tell Shisui later, brother. Well, Ruuo was a little surprised. Obito seemed to be smarter after not seeing him for a few days. Glancing outside again, Ruuo lowered his voice and whispered. This guy is spying on me. I can't get away. Later, you can find a way to go to the house of the Fugaku clan leader and bring a message to me. Remember, when you meet the Fugaku clan leader, you must first confirm your identity. If the other party is fake, you know what to do. Turn around and run away, shouting for help. Obito nodded. He was familiar with this aspect. Brother, what are you talking about? Tell him that the time has come. I have made an agreement with Five Tails to attack Hyuga. Let him prepare. Ruuo whispered. all he needs to do is hold the third generation back and tell the third generation that he agrees to hand over 5 tails to Konoha. I will get the signal and immediately have 5 tails launch the tailed beast Jade. Let's die tonight. The Hyuga disappears. Remember the important point and agree to hand over 5 tails to the third generation project. I will launch 5 tails immediately. Grandma. In the middle of speaking, Ruuo suddenly changed his smile, took a big mouthful of white fang, and patted Obito on the back of the head. Grandma. Obito immediately showed the same innocent face. Didn't you ask Grandma to leave some food for you? Go and eat quickly. If you want to do big things, how can you do it without a full stomach? Grandma stooped and walked towards the door with a cane. Also, remember to be polite in the future. The guests are already here, and they are not Hyuga, so how can they be locked out? Got it. Ruuo agreed obediently. The 2 brothers hurriedly went to eat. Ruuo was really hungry. He hadn't eaten much in 2 days and couldn't stop eating his grandma's food. Obito is also a crazy fan. Not long after, Grandma and Orochimaru's voices sounded at the door. Then it's too much trouble, senior. Don't be so formal, young man. Always respect your seniors. You haven't eaten yet. That's right. Let's eat together. We always have to eat. Grandma slowly brought Orochimaru in. Ruuo winked at Obito. Obito immediately understood and frantically shoveled rice into his mouth. Finally, he picked up a big chicken drumstick with his left hand and rushed outside without forgetting his ninja bag with his right hand. You just finished eating. Don't run too fast. Grandma scolded. I'll call Shisui over and let him teach us shuriken. Obito responded vaguely. Orochimaru raised his eyebrows and smiled slightly. Finally alive. Wakaki had just finished eating, and when he looked up, he saw Orochimaru and blinked. Huh, teacher, aren't you home yet? Wakao-kun, did you forget that you have to go to the Hokage building later to report on the mission? Orochimaru said with a smile. Should I go too? Ruuo blinked again, but isn't Grandpa Hokage executing Elder Danzo? Is he free? Hokage, Grandma suddenly said, how many generations have it been? It's still the 3rd generation, Grandma. Wakahu Kaido. He's still the 3rd generation. Grandma paused. He's in his 50s, right? Why won't he abdicate? That's right. Orochimaru agreed with a smile. The younger generation also feels that the 3rd generation has reached retirement age. Most of the Uchiha went home. But Fugaku didn't. Behind him stood several Uchiha elites, waiting in front of Elder Danzo's mansion. An hour ago, under the escort of 3rd generation and Anbu, Elder Danzo had returned to the mansion. Change clothes, take a bath, and give the last words to the clan members. Let's talk about it. Elder Danzo's last words. Daughter, actually a bit much. I explained it to 3rd generation outside Konoha for a long time, and after I came back, I explained it for more than an hour. Fugaku was indeed a little impatient. He hadn't even eaten dinner yet. The person at fault was Elder Danzo, who assassinated Wakahui and also took away the eyes of the Uchiha clan. Such crimes are too numerous to describe. But Fugaku could only wait. After all, this is also the last moment in Elder Danzo's life. Elder Danzo has confessed his crime, and he confessed his crime under force from the Uchiha clan. He can't urge the 3rd generation to take action now, can he? Fugaku-kun, everyone. Suddenly, Fugaku heard a familiar voice, as gentle as water, which immediately dispelled the irritability in his heart. Makoto, why are you here? Fugaku smiled from the bottom of his heart as he watched his wife walking towards him carrying a lunch box. Makoto-sama. Several Uchiha elites nodded and saluted. It's true of you that you don't want to eat, and you don't let everyone else eat. Come on, here are some cooked foods I bought. Let's eat them while they're hot. Makoto opened the lunch box, which contained the sushi and rice balls he had just bought, neatly arranged. There was also a large chicken drumstick in it, which looked a bit awkward. Why is there only one chicken drumstick? Fugaku raised his eyebrows. This is specially given to you by Obito-kun. Makoto smiled softly and took out the big chicken drumstick and handed it to Fugaku. Thank you for bringing his brother back to the village. This child. Fugaku chuckled, and the sliding touch of his palm made him stunned for a moment. His wife was secretly writing on his hand with her fingers. Fugaku looked at his wife who was smiling softly and realized something. If Fire Lord and Five Tails are ready, they will destroy the Hyuga tribe tonight. These were the first words Makoto delivered. This sentence also made Fugaku feel the weight of this chicken leg. This kid's way of thanking seems a little special. Fugaku smiled a little reluctantly. He kept checking with Makoto with his eyes, but Makoto shook his head and continued to slide it on his palm. He needs you to hold down the third generation and give him the signal. Drag and hold the third generation project. Signal. No. Are you serious? Indeed, the Uchiha clan is very at odds with the Hyuga clan. Not only children, but even adults sometimes say things like, sooner or later I will destroy the Hyuga clan. Especially when there is conflict. Even some Uchiha seniors talk after dinner about how to attack Hyuga. But as I said, don't make fun of tailed beasts. Tonight, inform the third generation that we agree to hand over the tailed beast, launch the tailed beast Jade, and destroy Hyuga. Makoto passed the final information to her husband. Both husband and wife saw solemnity in each other's eyes. What about that kid? Fugaku smiled. Why don't you see him coming? Obito-kun said that Orochimaru-sama is a guest at his home, and Wakahuo-kun and Grandma are entertaining him. Quote. Fugaku was silent. Orochimaru is a guest at Wakaki's house. At this time, Orochimaru is a student of the third generation and most likely the future fourth Hokage. He has been following Ruuo every step of the way, obviously preparing for the next negotiation in advance. Even guiding Ruuo and giving Five Tails to the village may not necessarily. Judging from the information passed on by his wife, Ruuo at least knows about the upcoming negotiations and will most likely participate. So, is this guy serious? Chief Fugaku. While Fugaku was thinking, a middle-aged woman came out with a cold expression and an indifferent tone. Danzo-sama has reached the end of his life. In his last words, there was something he wanted to return to Uchiha, and asked Lord Fugaku to confirm that his death was true. Master Fugaku, if you don't mind, just come with me. The middle-aged woman turned away after speaking. It was as if the murderer of Danzo was Fugaku. Fugaku frowned. Several other Uchiha elites couldn't stand it anymore. They are obviously sinners, but they still pretend to be victims. That's right, the victims are obviously the Uchiha whose eyes were gouged out, and that kid Wakahu. Please show some restraint, Fugaku shouted. After all, he is an elder of Konoha. He has chosen to apologize. Look at the clan emblem on his body and maintain his dignity as a wealthy clan member. Several Uchiha were speechless. Fugaku breathed out, you guys wait here for a while. After saying that, Fugaku walked towards the middle-aged woman. Come to the main hall. Danzo was lying on a clean bedding, covered with a white sheet with the Shimura family crest printed on it. Several women were sobbing not far away, and several Shimura clan ninjas were glaring at Fugaku at the door. Fugaku frowned, and the word, sorrow, he wanted to say was directly cancelled by him. The third generation stood aside, sighed, and walked towards Fugaku. Fugaku, this is the Sharingan that Danzo asked me to hand over to you. Third generation gave Fugaku a box. Fugaku took it and opened it. Inside was a pair of eyes soaked in nutrient solution. It's a pair of 3 Magatama. The origin of these eyes. Well, I have always known about it, but because I was too sensitive, I kept it secret. Third generation sighed again and revealed a shocking secret. Third generation Lord. Fugaku was very surprised. Let's talk as we walk, Fugaku. Third generation shook his head and walked out of the main hall. Fugaku looked back at the body of Elder Danzo, then glanced at the few Shimura clan members who were full of resentment in the room, frowned, and finally nodded. Condolences. After saying that, Fugaku stopped staying and turned around to follow third generation. The two of them walked to the door of the Shimura clan's house, and Fugaku motioned for the clan members and his wife to go back first. Looking at his wife's back, Fugaku became even more confused. I even forgot about the heavy chicken leg for a moment. Third generation Lord, I don't understand. Fugaku frowned. It's okay if you don't understand, Fugaku. Third generation puffed out smoke. Just like back then, Danzo and I didn't understand why someone from the Uchiha tribe would suddenly assassinate second Hokage. Fugaku, Danzo's eyes were not stolen. This, I can assure you with Danzo's soul. Under third generation's sincere description, Fugaku learned about an unknown past between Uchiha and second Hokage. This is a malignant incident that should have been buried in history. After first generation and Uchiha Madara established Konoha, Uchiha Madara announced her departure from Konoha due to different ideas. But at that time, Uchiha saw the hope of peace and did not want to continue to follow Uchiha Madara to live a war-torn life. After that, Uchiha Madara led 9 Tails to attack Konoha, was defeated by the first generation, and was buried in Konoha. This result may have stimulated some Uchiha people. The seeds of hatred took root and sprouted, and the gears of fate began to turn. Finally one day, the hateful Uchiha found an opportunity. He was supposed to have died on the battlefield, but suddenly appeared with the intention of attacking second Hokage and avenging the former Uchiha clan leader. Of course he failed, but the second Hokage did not want to take his life, but instead influenced him with the strong will of fire. The Uchiha was so ashamed that he committed suicide. The debt was cleared after death, and the second Hokage also sealed the matter and buried it deep in history. But the Uchiha's eyes remained. The former leader of the Roots, Shimura Danzo, was blinded in his right eye during a certain mission, and his right arm was also severely injured. Elder Danzo didn't want to let himself become a useless person who made no contribution to the village, so he activated these forbidden eyes. The story, that's the story anyway. Ruuo didn't know if Fugaku believed it. Anyway, when Fugaku told him, he really believed. Elder Danzo is really a strong ninja. Ruuo crossed his arms over his chest and nodded in agreement. His will of fire is the most special kind I have ever seen. You can make up such a story. Are you determined to deceive Fugaku? Fortunately, he was already prepared. Come on, try your best to deceive me, and let me see if Fugaku dares to agree to it. Brother is right. Asterisk 2. Obito and Shisui also agreed. Quote. Fugaku actually didn't want to dwell too much on this topic. As expected, third generation will hold a meeting to discuss the issue of Five Tails ownership. The reason is that the Five Tails Pursuit Army on the Iwagakure front has suspended its offensive. Third Tsuchikage Onoki has sent a negotiation envoy and is expected to arrive in Konoha tomorrow for negotiations. Lord Hokage is planning to hold an internal pre-negotiation meeting tonight to clarify the direction of tomorrow's negotiations. Judging from the importance of the content of the meeting, this should have been decided by the third generation headquarters and the Elders' Council, and was the highest level meeting in Konoha. However, Elder Danzo had already apologized, and in his last words before apologizing, he named Uchiha to participate. Elder Danzo repeatedly emphasized that after his death, Konoha must fully respect Uchiha's opinions, make up for his mistakes, and not allow misunderstandings to deepen. And Five Tails is the trophy captured by Ruuo, and it is a partnership beyond Jinchuriki. So Ruuo needs to be there with him tonight. And the third generation project also hints at Fugaku. Ruuo's opinion is very important, but given that he is still young and mentally immature, it is he, the clan leader, who makes the final decision. This made Fugaku relieved for a while. While he was very moved, he also felt unparalleled pressure. The past is over, and debts will be cleared after death. As Ruuo said, Elder Danzo is a strong ninja who is dedicated to Konoha. Although he made a mistake, he apologized, and in order to prevent the tragedy from happening again, he also secured a lot of power for Uchiha in his last words. But the key, this little devil doesn't play by the rules. Well, why are you bombing Hyuga again? Fugaku always felt threatened. This is obviously because the kid himself is unwilling to hand over Five Tails. But Fugaku had a vague feeling that something was wrong. With this kid's character, would he do such a roundabout thing? Threatening himself, the leader of the clan, to save Five Tails. Shouldn't he just threaten Konoha with the tailed beast Jade? Wait, this seems to be more serious. It seems that you have understood that the will of fire and the will of darkness are compatible, Lord Ruuo. Orochimaru, who was sitting next to Fugaku, smiled and said, this can be regarded as the wealth left by Elder Danzo after his death. Indeed, Fugaku agreed. Darkness and light seem to be opposites, but they are also closely related to each other. There is no absolute right or wrong, and there is no irreconcilable contradiction. No matter when, you can gain more by forgiving your enemies than destroying them. Fugaku said the last sentence while staring at Ruuo. If Orochimaru wasn't here, he could explain it more clearly. Ruuo couldn't hold back his laughter and was about to pretend that he didn't understand when he heard his grandma suddenly speak. Little Fugaku, I seem to have heard your words from a senior when Konoha was first established. The words just fell. Fugaku and Orochimaru immediately sat up straight and looked at grandma with serious expressions on their faces. The same is true for the three CBD brothers. Even grandma calls her senior. Could it be a ninja from the first generation era? I remember that I was the first Hokage at the time and said something similar to that senior, saying that I should forgive my enemies and influence my opponents. Then the adult retorted to first Hokage, grandma recalled. He said, the Uchiha clan has always been good at using fire style to forgive their opponents, but few people can bear it. That senior is right. Ruuo agreed on the spot. If you want to be forgiven by the will of fire, you must be prepared to be baptized by the will of fire. Brother is right. Obito and Shisui shouted with arms raised. Well, grandma nodded with satisfaction. Quote. Fugaku and Orochimaru looked at each other, each showing an awkward but polite smile. The case was solved. This boy's strange will of fire is indeed inseparable from words and deeds. Okay. Grandma waved her hand at this time. Little Fugaku and this, young man, what are your names? My junior's name is Orochimaru, senior. Orochimaru responded politely. Oh, you two must have something to do with Xiao Ruuo, right? Then don't delay, go quickly. Grandma waved her hand, try not to be too late. Children are still growing and need enough sleep. What about Hyuga? Senior, is this kid going to put the Hyuga to sleep collectively once he kills the tailed beast Jade? Fugaku was getting more and more anxious, but with Orochimaru here, he really couldn't speak. It shouldn't be too late, senior. Orochimaru smiled. Well, grandma nodded. Fugaku also bravely agreed. I will try my best to bring Lord Ruuo back as soon as possible, senior. There's no need to be so anxious. Grandma murmured. Business matters should always be handled well. Hokage Building. Meeting room. It is now 9 o'clock in the evening. After many incidents and accidents throughout the day, the issue of the ownership of Five Tails has finally come to the negotiation table. The head of third generation sat at the end of the long conference table, with two elders sitting on one left and one on the right. Orochimaru and Fugaku were sitting in the middle of the conference table. Ruuo sat on the other side, looking at the third generation project from a distance across the conference table. Xiao Ruuo, you don't have to sit so far away. Third generation looked a little helpless. Ordinarily, if it wasn't for Fugaku to completely let down his guard, Ruuo wouldn't even be qualified to serve. But the teacher said that this meeting will decide Kokuo's future. It is impossible for me to let my companions be wronged in the slightest. Ruuo looked serious and went straight to the point. He knocked on the table again and added, protecting my companions well is my bottom line. Quote. Third generation took a puff of cigarette. First, he glanced at the two elders and found that the two old guys had a little displeasure on their faces, or they were suppressing their anger. Danzo is dead, executed by his own hands. The chief of the Uchiha clan had personally identified it. In the morning, Konoha's top management had already held a meeting regarding the ownership of Five Tails. At that time, Danzo was still very ambitious and wanted to seal Five Tails even at the cost of a big fight. In the blink of an eye, it was fast forward to Danzo's funeral. They have been comrades for decades, and the two elders can still sit here calmly, sharing the same table with a brat. The overall situation is already the most important thing. Xiao Ruuo, third generation, sighed secretly. No matter how much the two old guys used silence to put pressure on him, he had to pretend not to see it. The meeting must continue. What do you think about Kokuo? Third generation asked. Of course. Ruuo's eyes widened. But please, Grandpa Hokage, please settle the payment for this mission for me first. I have a perfect plan, but I need some startup capital. The two elders frowned. Orochimaru kept smiling. Fugaku's brows were furrowed from the moment he entered the venue, and he was still thinking about what to say next. How Ruuo got in touch with Five Tails, Fugaku didn't know. But after coming out of Ruuo's house, especially after hearing his grandma's instructions, Fugaku was convinced that Ruuo could definitely do what he said. Ruuo said that he never let grandma down. So in this negotiation, what attitude should he adopt in response to the third generation project? First of all, Five Tails certainly cannot be handed over. But the third generation project has already hinted to him that it would be best to persuade Ruuo to use Five Tails as a bargaining chip to negotiate with Iwagakure. The proceeds from the negotiation will also belong to Uchiha. Elder Danzo's apology and last words have built a bridge of understanding between Uchiha and the village. As long as he nods, the conflict between Uchiha and the village may gradually disappear. But similarly, the Hyuga tribe may also disappear. Orochimaru stayed with him all the way, and he didn't even have room to talk to Ruuo. Fugaku also tried hinting, but the little fool responded with an, "I understand," look every time. It can be seen that this kid really wants to blow up Hyuga. Fugaku didn't dare to take risks, but he didn't dare to say it clearly either. After all, the idea of using tailed beasts to bomb Hyuga is actually no different from using tailed beasts to bomb a village. This requires Orochimaru to report to the third generation project. Wouldn't Elder Danzo apologize in vain? The third generation looked at Fugaku secretly. But he was shocked by the bitterness and hatred on Fugaku's face. Fugaku, could he be suspicious already? Otherwise, based on his understanding of Fugaku, after hearing Danzo's last words, he shouldn't have been like this. Is this because he wants Xiao Ruuo to test his attitude? Third generation was thinking secretly, but before he could say anything, Koharu knocked on the table first and said coldly, "This meeting is about tomorrow's negotiation with Iwagakure. Hokage, are you just going to waste your time with this brat? If that's the case, then I don't need to participate. You can let me know when you have coaxed the child." HMPH. Mito Manabu, who moved to the bed opposite Koharu, also snorted coldly, "In this situation, children should not." I said, "Who are you two?" Mito Minyan was mid-sentence when he was suddenly interrupted by Wakahuo. Ruuo asked in a puzzled tone, "Isn't this meeting discussing Kokuo's future? What's going on with this old aunt and grandpa? Did you go to the wrong place?" "Lord Ruuo," Fugaku just stopped him. "Boom, I am an elder of Konoha, kid." Koharu slammed the table and pointed in the direction of the door. "Now, get out of here immediately. This is not the place you should be." "Koharu," third generation Megang shouted to stop him. Boom, Ruuo slammed the table. "I've long been unhappy with you, old woman. Only a great ninja like Elder Danzo is worthy of being an elder of Konoha, so why are you sitting here?" Ruuo pointed to the door. "Get out of here." "Okay." The third generation shouted loudly, then glared at the two elders angrily. Danzo had almost ruined a big thing for him, and he finally saved it at a huge cost. "You two are thinking of bad things again." Five Tails are Ruuo's companions brought back from the battlefield. According to the wartime rules, they are also Ruuo's trophies. If you two can't recognize this, then submit your resignation to the daimyo. Every ninja who fights bloody battles on the front lines of Konoha will not admit that there are elders like you. The third generation stood in front of the Uchiha clan leader and yelled at the two elders. "Go to bed." Koharu and Mitomen Enito are both confused. "No, do you want to listen to what you're saying, monkey?" It was Mito Menyon who reacted first. "Something's wrong with Monkey today. Danzo is dead, and Monkey should be the one to attack the most, but the targets of the attack turned out to be him and Koharu. This is unusual. Could it be that Grandpa Hokage is right?" At this time, Ruuo suddenly shouted loudly, calling for third generation. "Get off the table first." Fugaku couldn't help it anymore and shouted. "Okay." Ruuo got down from the table obediently and sat down. Looking at Orochimaru, the smile on Orochimaru's face remains elegant. Really interesting. Elder Danzo apologized and committed suicide, and the remaining two elders were scolded by Hokage in public and even asked to submit their resignations. In just one day, Konoha's top management was in such chaos. And the source of all this, in the final analysis, is a B-level rescue mission that does not exist. Ah, this world is really wonderful. Boom, third generation Sama. Urgent report from the front. Suddenly, a Konoha ninja broke in. Third generation immediately looked at the ninja and said, "Say. The Iwagakure ninjas launched a surprise attack an hour ago, and the Four Tails Jinchuriki used the tailed beast Jade to destroy our defenses." According to the report of the ninjas of the Hyuga clan, an Iwagakure force with no less than 2,000 people has crossed the border of the Land of Fire and is heading towards Konoha at full speed. Third generation Sama. Just as this ninja finished his report, another ninja rushed in. The Kumogakure ninjas launched a surprise attack an hour ago. They have already broken through our defenses. The frontline ninjas suffered heavy casualties. Third generation Sama. The third ninja rushed over. The third generation looked a little twitchy. Who is it this time? Is it Sunagakure or Kurigakure? It's Uzumaki Kushina. Who? Third generation couldn't change his mind for a while. Who? Uzumaki Kushina Jonin left the village privately. She claimed that she would beat up Five Tails and avenge Minato Jonin. The ninja who reported this time spoke softer. Boom. Ruuo slammed the table, turned around and walked out of the conference room. How unreasonable is it to avenge a spy? Let me meet her. This was definitely not going to be a peaceful night. Iwagakure's firm determination to recover Five Tails is beyond the imagination of Konoha's top brass. On the surface, they sent out a signal for negotiation, but in fact, they secretly gathered ninja troops. Four Tails opened the way and forcibly broke through Konoha's blockade. Ruuo once heard a theory in his previous life. In any battle, a unit that goes deep alone will not end well. Until there was a group of special rabbits who were not afraid of life and death. Because they were too poor, they could only use tactical interleaving to the extreme. They completed the Wuchang dungeon and opened the gate of heaven with one punch. Since then, going deep alone has gradually evolved into a brand new special beheading tactic. Of course, tonight's Iwagakure ninja was obviously a little crazy. The 2,000-strong Iwagakure force forced its way through Konoha's defense line. Part of it is used to counter the encirclement, and part of it is used to go straight to the Konoha base camp. There are tactics, but not many, but they are useful. It was foreseeable that Konoha was caught off guard, and many ninjas would be surrounded and captured by Iwagakure. And if Konoha chooses to demolish the east wall to repair the west wall in order to stop this Iwagakure force, then one improper operation may cause the entire defense line to collapse. Because the enemy of Konoha is not only Iwagakure now, there is also Kumogakure who launches a surprise attack with Iwagakure at the same time. Ruuo actually has a lot of credit here. He and Orochimaru rushed to the Canopy Bridge. It looked like a surprise attack, but in fact it was a disguised form that allowed Iwakaku to gather the ninja troops in advance. Afterwards, he ran away on Five Tails, allowing Iwagakure to use the shortest time and the firmest determination to launch a large-scale gathering in pursuit. On the other hand, look at Konoha. Although they supported Iwagakure's front line in the shortest possible time, they lost the best defensive opportunity and were not as resolute as Iwagakure. That's why they were forced out of such a large gap under the bombing of Four Tails. And the most important thing is, Konoha's golden decision-making period was delayed for a whole day by various accidents. First there was the own accident, a Five Tails attack on Konoha. Then the spy Minato attacked the elder Danzo, which led to, the deeds of the elder Danzo were exposed, and finally chose to commit suicide to apologize. Third generation looked at Danzo as a guest star and delayed the whole evening. During this period, Iwagakure completed various strategic arrangements and cooperation negotiations with Kumogakure, and launched a full-scale raid an hour ago. These Yenian souls are starting to set fire to the mountain. If fire rides on a fire dragon and flies in the sky, you can see the fire in the distance even though it is far away. The distance from the border to Konoha is not close, it just doesn't seem that far at the feet of Five Tails. You can see the fire from here, so you can imagine how big the fire is. This is also a delaying tactic, Mr. Ruuo. Orochimaru, who was hanging under the fire dragon, said, "Fire can block the enemy troops on the flanks and cause a lot of trouble to the enemy. If the fire is too strong, it is equivalent to a continuous fire-style ninjutsu. If you want to force through the interception, you will always have to pay a price. Whether it is bypassing the fire site to intercept or put out the fire, it will consume time and require a lot of manpower. The frontline defensive front will inevitably be affected. Fighting in the enemy's territory can always easily put the opponent's commander into a dilemma. Orochimaru was calm enough to spread battlefield knowledge to Wakaka, as if he had forgotten that he was still running for Hokage. Then it's no wonder Hanzo Sanshoyu wants to launch the second ninja war. Ruuo raised his eyebrows, suddenly understanding the demigod. A small country in a tiny place actually launched a war against 3 major ninja villages at the same time. But no, my own country is treated as a battlefield by others all day long, pushed, and rubbed again and again. Who can bear this? Nagato always said, you ninjas from big countries don't care about the feelings of small countries. Ruuo felt it intuitively now. I support you, Nagato, cousin. Ruuo suddenly spotted a figure on the ground with red hair, a long skirt, and a lot of Anbu following behind him. However, these Anbu seem to be a little timid. Although they are obviously not slower than this one, they keep their distance and don't dare to get close. Teacher, do you still have the chains? She seems to be in trouble. Let's take her for a ride. Orochimaru also noticed Kushina and pursed his lips. He especially wants to tell Ruuo now. Son, this woman most likely doesn't need your help. She's here to beat up your partner. But considering that his first task is to stabilize these 2 troubles, his purpose is to delay time. So Orochimaru agreed, of course, but it's not long enough, so it needs to go down a little bit. And are you sure you can bear the weight of 2 people? No problem, I brought eye drops. If Ruuo hadn't forgotten to give himself an eye-damaging buff, he wouldn't have told Orochimaru that his fire dragon bullet could at least carry 3 Akamaiki Dingzo around Konoha several times. Hey, that red-haired big sister down there. Grab the chain and I'll take you for a ride. Ruuo controlled the fire dragon to launch a dive. Kushina heard the sound and looked back. A boy was riding a fire dragon, hanging a man, and there was a chain hanging down. Wow, this is the world outside Konoha. Kushina's eyes suddenly lit up. Here, quick, whoosh. The fire dragon skimmed the ground at low altitude. Kushina firmly grasped the chain, and Ruuo controlled it to make the fire dragon tremble, and then flew forward unsteadily. Woohoo, it's so exciting. Kushina was so excited that she even made faces at Anbu behind her. When she first heard that Minato was yelled at like this by Five Tails, Kushina was really angry and wanted to seek revenge from Five Tails without even thinking about it. After running a certain distance, Kushina suddenly calmed down and seemed unable to leave the village. But everything is out. Ever since Grandma Mito sealed this big guy into her body, she hasn't seen the world outside Konoha for a long time. Then let's have some fun. Ho ho, is that Five Tails? Why is it big dog? Why is it so bright over there so late? Kushina is like a curious baby. She has not left Konoha for a long time and is full of curiosity about everything. That's a battlefield over there, kid. The ninjas from Iwagakure are coming. Orochimaru smiled and deliberately avoided Kushina's name. It can be delayed for a while. This voice. Kushina looked up. Lord Orochimaru. How did you? Kushina is a little panicked. Is Orochimaru-sama also here to capture her? Don't be nervous, kid. It's my disciple who wants to take you for a ride. I just handed him a chain. Orochimaru has a good impression of his disciple, and if he can't beat him later, he may be given a lighter punishment. That's it. Kushina looked surprised, waved to Ruuo above and shouted. Thank you, young man. I'll treat you to ramen later. It's a deal, Ruuo responded with a smile. The fire dragon swayed and flew towards the direction of Platacodan Mountain. Kushina was shouting and screaming, so excited. Orochimaru smiled and said nothing. Ruuo also smiled and said nothing. The 3 of them were getting further and further away from Konoha, with Anbu being thrown further and further behind them. After confirming that Orochimaru was also on top, they simply gave up the pursuit. Went back to the village to take orders. Not long after, the 3 Ruuo finally arrived at Five Tails. The people responsible for guarding Five Tails are several Uchiha elites. They are gathered in front of a bonfire. Five Tails is lying on the ground, looking at these descendants of Indra. The scene is actually a bit warm. Kushina has not forgotten her original intention of running out. Young man, just put me in front of that big guy, thank you. Is sister here to see Kokuo too? Ruuo asked knowingly. Well, my little brother was raped by this big guy, Kushina was mid-sentence when she suddenly found that the chain on her hand was loosened, and it was Lord Orochimaru who had let go of the chain. However, he only put down a small part. Orochimaru smiled and said, "Sorry, my hand slipped. It scared me to death." Kushina was still frightened. Wakaho Jundang, who was riding on the fire dragon, didn't hear it. He controlled the fire dragon to put Kushina down, and then flew to the top of Kokuo's head under Kushina's gaze. Orochimaru did not follow Wakahui or Kushina this time, but chose to land next to a group of Uchiha. Orochimaru-sama. The Uchiha people stood up one after another. Orochimaru's status in Konoha was not low, and he was also Wakahui's teacher, and his reputation in the Uchiha clan was also very high. Everyone, it may not be too safe here for a while. If you believe me, you might as well move to the other side temporarily. All the Uchiha looked at each other, and before they could react, they saw the red-haired woman who had just left not far away walking over, rolling up her sleeves and looking menacing. "Hey, big guy, it was you who bullied my little brother, right?" Kushina shouted. Five Tails Kokuo puffed out from his nostrils. "Indra, I feel some of Kurama's chakra from this human being, but it seems to be controlled by a very strong seal." Well, the reincarnation of Asura sealed it with a slap of wood style. Counting the time, that was more than 40 years ago. While Ruuo responded to Five Tails, he did not forget to call Kushina from a distance. "Big sister, what is your little brother's name?" Kushina put her hands in front of her mouth and shouted, "His name is Namikaze Minato." "Boy, get out of the way, I want to avenge my little brother." "Nani?" Ruuo said, surprised, "So the guy who wants to avenge the spy is you?" "Spy?" Kushina also looked surprised, but Minato is not a spy. He wanted to assassinate Danzo Elder and was arrested by the Konoha Security Department in the afternoon. "You can ask them." Kushina then looked at the Uchiha in front of her. These Uchiha are the elites who first followed Fugaku out of the village. They were by his side when Fugaku used Genjutsu Hypnosis Minato. But the situation is like this. "Everyone, time may be running out." Orochimaru smiled and gestured, "This way, please." Several Uchiha looked at each other, but after all, they still couldn't give a definition of whether Minato is a spy. Under Orochimaru's guidance, the figure flashed and temporarily came to the side. Why are you leaving?" Kushina was wondering. Minato would assassinate Elder Danzo. No way, he is so timid. Could it be that he heard himself secretly swearing at someone last time? But what she was scolding was third generation. "Lord Orochimaru, did Minato really assassinate Danzo Elder?" Kushina asked Orochimaru for help. Orochimaru kept smiling, yes and no. In the eyes of Lord Wakaho, Minato did assassinate Elder Danzo, and Lord Minato is still a spy in Lord Wakaho's eyes. Nani? Kushina was really shocked now. Master Orochimaru definitely didn't lie to her. The boy named Ruuo helped her run out so far, so he was obviously a good person. So that boy Minato is really. But in the eyes of people other than Wakaho-kun, Minato-kun did not assassinate Elder Danzo, nor was he a spy. Orochimaru continued to smile and said, "It depends on your relationship with Wakahara-kun, and whether you can recognize Wakahara-kun's will of fire." The same thing, starting from different angles, can lead to different conclusions. No one can say whether these conclusions are right or wrong, they just have different perspectives. So Kushina, what is your conclusion? Forehead. Kushina was a little dizzy. But Ruuo didn't faint. Kokuo, put some pressure on her. Understood. Kokuo immediately blew out a large amount of steam from his nostrils. After Orochimaru felt the temperature of this steam, the interest in his eyes increased instead of decreasing. He raised his fingers and prepared to run away. At the same time, he did not forget to remind. "Follow your heart, Kushina." Whoosh. Orochimaru disappeared. Kushina looked weird. He looked up at Five Tails who had already stood up, muttering, "You must be crazy," and saw that Ruuo had already made a seal with his fingers in front of him, so he also made a seal of opposition. Roar. Five Tails activated his most talented skill, Five Tails Roar. Don't underestimate this move. Although it doesn't have any technical content, Orochimaru, White Fang, Minato, and Danzo have all suffered injuries of varying severity due to this move. But for Kushina, too noisy, big guy. Kushina's red hair was blown by the wind, but her body did not retreat even half an inch. Chakra surged wildly, and she clapped her hands violently, King Kong blockade. The two chakra chains immediately shot toward Five Tails, growing longer in the air, and aimed at Five Tails' two front hooves. No need to hide, Kokuo. Ruuo said calmly. Let her tie it up, whatever she wants. Whizzing. Two chains tied Five Tails' front hooves, but Five Tails fell down in the next second, pressed down with his whole body, and actually brought Kushina forward. In fact, Kushina was stable at first. But the moment her Vajra blockade bound Five Tails, two chakras suddenly connected to her conscious space, causing her to lose consciousness for a moment, and then she stumbled forward 2 steps. How did you come here? Kushina's mind stands in the sealed space. Behind it is Nine Tails imprisoned in a cage, in front of it is Five Tails crawling on the ground, and Ruuo above its head. The two chains became a bridge connecting the mental spaces of both parties. Ruuo said nothing, but glanced at Kushina coolly, and then his eyes came to Nine Tails behind her. Roar. Nine Tails let out an extremely ferocious roar. It didn't want any tailed beast to see it in such a miserable state. Kushina frowned and was about to turn around and yell, but she heard Ruuo on the other side of Five Tails suddenly shouted coldly. Be honest, Kurama. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.